think we're talking enough that we should put it in a podcast again. And then you got the camera, and here we are.
We were some fresh-faced boys.
Yes.
And
You didn't have the
more
curls.
hair on my beard and none of it on my head.
It felt like an adventure.
I can hear the music playing in my head.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button. I am one of your hosts, Alejandro, and with me is the busy man.
Paul, hey everybody. I am very busy, but it's good to see you.
How you doing, Paul? Because I know you have had a hell of a last 2 days.
There's been a lot going on. Oddly enough, there's nothing really going on in the city. It's just a lot of people wanting me to do many different things all at once again. I'm also volunteering for my church's vacation Bible school. So
that gives you the extra.
That's what's taking up my mornings right now. But then after that, I've been dealing with some tech-related issues that kept getting pushed back. Fortunately, we just got it fixed today. So that is no longer going to be a problem for me. And nice. I can move on with my life. I've also been doing something in the pipeline that I can't talk about yet, but I'm really excited about.
It is the thing.
I briefly mentioned it to you.
Okay. I'm not going to mention it too, but I'll give you the time.
I'm working on more details, and one day I'm going to reveal all of that to the world. But anyway, I'm working on something.
No, I'm doing good. It's just been finally, I think I'm finally moving on from that time that I was sick. I have just had some lingering pains.
It's been a while that you were sick.
Yeah, it's been a while, but I feel like it left me. It wasn't COVID again, thank God, but it must have been a weird influenza that left me with some weird pains in the body.
Flu does some weird crap to you, I tell you. Yeah,
so it's it must have been something that must have infected a part of my stomach. My doctor said. So I've been just doing some massages with something called Declocil, which is this cream that's
sponsored segment.
Yeah,
yeah. You even had it prepared.
Yeah, because I just have it here in my thing in my desk. Yeah, and I'm just recovering, and I've lost some weight. I've been pretty happy about that in the middle of all this.
That's always a nice benefit to the horrible pain that sickness brings you.
Yeah, absolutely. And good thing if this all is happening in the middle of us finally concluding the key 3, we can call it that. So, but we're definitely gonna talk a little bit more about that. But before we dive into that, there's a reminder that this is the X Button Podcast, our gaming podcast that posts every Wednesday from 2 p.m. onwards, God willing. Available on the YouTube channel Escape Media, as well as most audio services around the world, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. And you can find links on the RSS feed at anchor.fm/escape-media. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. And I just want to address that with Paul behind the scenes, we're talking about a shift in date that may happen later in the year. I had mentioned it in this reacts that I did with our friend PJ/JOK that I recorded after we saw the Microsoft, the Xbox Bethesda showcase that happened this last Sunday. And I kind of announced it, but I haven't posted it yet. If you see it live, you'll probably see it there. So you will keep you updated if we end up moving the days for later. But for now, it's still a Wednesday show that we're gonna post on Wednesday at any time that time allows us after 2 p.m. Paul, what have you been playing?
So I played several games this time because I needed to branch out a little bit after the last couple of weeks where I only played Destiny 2.
Yeah.
And the first one was one of the games that came out on the PlayStation Plus monthly catalog, which was Naruto to Boruto Shinobi Striker.
So is it just a multiplayer game, or is there story content?
There seems to be some kind of story content. That I've been going through this really drawn out tutorial on it that makes you go to each of the main segments of the game to kind of a character from the story shows up and tries to narrate of hey, this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. And then you go into a little sort of mission that just is the environment. There's some NPCs and you got to learn how to do the stuff because they want you to, I guess, learn before you jump into multiplayer, obviously. But it seems like most of the game is geared for multiplayer so that you can build your little Naruto OC, do not steal, and then put that into matches against other characters, and then slowly you gain currency to unlock different ninja techniques, different outfits, and stuff like that. That seems to be the main gameplay loop for it.
I needed to find out if there was like some single player stuff, because I know that Naruto game from back in the 360 days was really good. And I've been wanting like to try it, something like that, because I mentioned before that I'm not much into anime like per se, but I'm very much into anime adjacent stuff per se.
Understand.
And I think gaming is such a good way for me to like indulge myself into being able to interact with anime.
You can usually get past a lot of the nonsense. Unfortunately, it is plagued by a lot of the same problems of menus, especially where it's like you got to go through all of these little stupid details. It is very where the Naruto games of like the 360 era were a lot focused on those like big cinematic moments retelling the story, which were like my favorite parts of it. This is very much like build your own character and then go into like this sort of mini sandbox area, and then it's like a team deathmatch, or you have to capture zones or whatever. But the real draw is that you're creating your own character out of it, and then you're slowly getting better to continue playing all that. So yeah, it's all right. I think for the people that like it, it's going to be nuts. It covers all the details because it takes place after, like in the middle of Boruto, which is the sequel series from Naruto. So of course you get spoiled on everything that happened.
So why is it called Boruto? Is that the name of a character? Or?
That is the name of Naruto's son.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, this is like literally the way Naruto ends. It flashes forward like 20 years or something. He becomes the Hokage. He has a child named Boruto, which is a translation of the word bolt, but that doesn't flow as well, so they call it Boruto. It's better than the side character named Sarada, which sounds all right until you realize that's badly translated of salad. And that is literally what they said, unfortunately. Anyway, so yeah, because of that, it's like a VR thing where you flash back and you can play against enemies of different eras and whatever. So it's kind of like, all right, we just assume you understand what's going on. Let's just go have some fun. So I can't really fault them for it, but it just didn't really have enough of that staying power for me to continue playing it. Beyond that, Guilty Gear Strive had a new update, and I really wanted to try it out. And they beefed up one of my favorite characters named Kai, and I have been playing a little bit of that. Unfortunately, their lobby system is terrible, and it's really hard to find players to play, which
so
sucks.
You actually like playing fighting games online?
It depends. It really depends, because
I don't.
I love the aesthetic of a lot of them, and I hate the process of playing them. But this one is so simple, and they really brought it down to allow people to play it. And with each fighting game I've tried to learn, it's gotten easier to understand like their own specific dialect that they use to kind of communicate moves. So now I'm like, oh, I kind of understand this. So like QCF and then like crazy arrows directing things. So it's just because I'm learning how to actually understand that language that it's making it easier. And it's just so gorgeous of a game, and it's so easy to jump into matches that it's worth it sometimes. But the fact that I just struggle so much to find anybody to play, no matter what region I'm in, makes it a little frustrating. Beyond that, I played John Wick Hex briefly, just to talk about that for a second. I didn't expect to enjoy that as much as I do. Yeah,
it's like I've seen videos of it. Ironically, anyone that has PlayStation Plus, the new PlayStation Plus just launched the extra and premium tiers. If you go the extra route, it's there. Many games I've talked about in this show that we played in recent sales are all there. So I'm feeling mighty gypped right now, but continue.
At least we know that we have good enough taste that even the people that created this were like, they would want these games, and we're like, wait, we already have those games. So I mean, this is just the PlayStation Plus thing feels like for people that need to catch up to everyone else and don't already own all these games. Anyway, I really didn't expect John Wick to work in like a almost turn-based XCOM style of like plan every single second of your action. But then when you really sit back on it and you play it back, I mean, it looks janky as frick, but it's it just feels fun. It like scratches this weird itch of a very simple game that I can just play and enjoy, because once you've played the first mission, you kind of have played the rest. There's just like added weapons that slowly go through that, harder enemies and whatever, but it's just entertaining to tear through dudes. Then I played Ace Combat 7 on my 4K TV.
It's stunning, right?
It is a pretty
Now, quick question: did you do that because you went to see Top Gun?
No, I haven't seen it yet, but
Me neither. I want to go see it. I heard so many great things about Maverick.
They even had a DLC for Top Gun Maverick that has planes from the movie in there, depending on if it was just skins and like full new jets that were either existing or fake that they made for the movie. But either way, it's really cool. I started the game from the beginning on easy, and then I played it all in first person view, which I didn't really do much of, but I was playing some like jets that I didn't play with as much, and I was just really enjoying like some nostalgia, the F-14 being one of those, because of course that was the original Top Gun, but also that was like a huge one for old Ace Combat games, and it made me really happy. And there was even a skin from the original Air Combat for PS1 that was on one of the F-22s, and that made me really happy because I didn't think they remembered that their first game was called Air Combat and not Ace Combat. So that made me happy. Anyway, I played a lot of Dying Light 2 besides that.
Yeah, one of the games that we did our arrangement for because it came in on a recent sale. I haven't touched it yet. Would you believe me?
I would believe you, I think. I was really mean to this game when I first started it up, and there's a part of it that I will hold on to. The plot was like super like rudimentary and like plays itself super seriously, but once you get past that point and you start running around, you realize it's just so fun.
And that, whenever you said that, that's why I was like, alarm bells started going towards you, because it's like, that was Dying Light 1, and we recently played Dying Light 1, so I was like, that sounds like the first game. Why are you
it's funny because
grumpy
we were
about it?
talking over the plot or skipping over all the cutscenes for one. So I had like no memory outside of what I kind of remembered of like, okay, he's like a CIA agent or something, and he's dropping in, he's trying to like betray them to get this thing from a dude that's in there. And then there's a UFC fighter that doesn't do anything. And that was like all I kind of remembered of the story of Dying Light 1. So this one I was like, okay, they've got to have like learned from their lesson a little bit from there, right? And they just kind of went, and the world is worse. And then from there, you just kind of rolled with it. I think part of it is because I just didn't like the opening segment where you just like meet this random guy that kind of info dumps at you. And then there's literally a point where he's like, oh, I think I'm getting worried about you. Time to leave. That's almost like word for word what he says. And then he just leaves after another couple of lines, and you never see him again. I was like, what was that about? So that was weird. When you play it, you'll understand. But after that, it got significantly better, learning, like meeting the new characters that I'm going to deal with and get quests from. It was fun. It's really entertaining to find the new weapons, understand how the system works. You can't repair weapons now. You literally have to use the weapon, and the method is that when you modify it, it just gives it durability back. And so people have been using that to make the weapons last longer, but there's not actually a way to repair weapons in this game.
But I mean,
it was in the first one.
Oh, okay, yeah. But that's the thing. I was like, isn't durability and repair kind of like the same thing?
The whole there's like a added focus on buying things from the craft people now. So it's not more about like holding on to one weapon. They want you to use a weapon. They want it to get down, so you modify it to get better, and then you continue to use it when it goes down. But eventually they want you to continue rotating weapons. So they don't want to give you a way to just get this one high rank thing and just keep it. Also, because each level you get, the weapons are capped by not only their rarity and the color, but the number. So you can get like a gold level 1 thing and it's trash because you just got a level 2 thing that's blue. That's
so
better.
It's Destiny.
Yes. So yeah, like the light level is very indicative of that, except you can't destroy lower rarity things to boost the power of your high rarity things.
So no infusing. So you just have to
correct.
Hope you get something better.
Exactly. So there's even like Easter egg weapons, which kind of frustrates me because they're going to destroy themselves and there's nothing you can do about it. So that was like, that's kind of upsetting. But I guess there's got to be something about that. Besides that, the only gripe that I have with it is that certain upgrades are tied behind siding with a certain faction. So there's like a really good crossbow that you get halfway through working with the peacekeepers, but you have to work with them to get this really good.
I like that because that's a very RPG thing to do. Like siding with the.
If that wasn't one of the only distance weapons in the entire game, I would agree with you. But because that's such a jump over everything else in the entire game, because you get like a bow and then there's that crossbow, and the crossbow you can like switch different ammo types. Yeah,
because the game doesn't have guns, right?
No, not at all. Yeah. Not like the first game.
That's awesome. Finally, not like something fresh. It's like a melee combat game instead of a shooter.
At first, I thought I would hate it more, but the more I realized there's a lot more variations of weapons. Like there's like punch daggers, there's these huge glaives, there's axes, your bats, and all that stuff. So I was worried it was just going to be like the two options that there used to be, but there seems to be more to work with on that. And besides that, I'm enjoying running around and accidentally killing myself by falling off a roof at the wrong spot. And it's entertaining.
Yeah, many reviews had said that there is a gem of a game here that was just hidden behind a bunch of the glitches that were like damaging many people's experiences. So we got this game apparently like after an array of patches. Have you gotten anything like buggy?
There's a couple of moments of bugginess. For the most part, nothing's been like really game breaking. Just some of those moments, like one of the volatiles, I was in a UV area and the volatile wound up for its animation to dive, and then it just tackled me in the middle of the area and instantly killed me. And I was like, that's not supposed to happen. And a few other moments of like ragdoll physics, but those are just really fun, especially when you charge up an attack and they just go.
That's the thing. That's just open world. Like open worlds are generally janky. It's rare for you to find even the most polished open worlds eventually like devolve into some jankiness, because that's the nature of the beast. So it's functionality at this point, that's the problem.
Yeah. There is one problem. Whenever you open up crafting merchants, they're all T-posing. They're supposed to like kind of sit there, and there's like a menu next to them, and they're sitting there. You hit the button, and then they're like. So that's just kind of entertaining, and I could still go through the menu without a problem.
Another game from a polished studio that is suffering T-posing. What's going on with the T-posing over at the first CDPR and now Techland?
I don't even know, but it's entertaining. So I would say anybody, if you were worried about the bugs in Dying Light 2, I think they fix anything.
It's co-op also, so it's a co-op game.
Yeah. So when you jump in, we gotta work on that, because
we have a couple co-op games that we have to get through this summer. This and Stranger of Paradise.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
All right. What have you been playing?
I finished my replay of Assassin's Creed Origins, at least the main campaign, and started also playing the DLC that I had not played ever, even though I bought it like years ago. But it was just sitting there, something like, I'll get to you. And I never got to. I'll get to you. And I never got to. But that's what I love about this old games getting 60 frames patch, because it's basically like, to me, it feels like a new game because I'm seeing it in a way that I wasn't seeing it before. And let me tell you, Assassin's Creed Origins, shut up. All the way up to my top 5 Assassin's Creed experiences from that entire series in this replay. I cannot believe there was a point in my life that I always said, yeah, I think I enjoyed Origins, but I don't know if I loved it. I didn't really vibe with it. But well, guess what? I think I mentioned it the last time we talked about games about the last time we talked about games we've been playing. It's like, this game has made me eat massive crow about how much me engaging with that world just gave me such a magical moment in a way I haven't had with a Ubisoft style open world in so long. It's like I kept sending you guys some of the screenshots of some places I never went when I originally played that game, because I was playing that game like I thought it was like the previous Assassin's Creed games of just mainlining. These new Assassin's Creed games is about engaging with the world. It's not about just like a mainline thing that you just blast through. And I didn't give this game enough credit of how well tuned it is with how much you can engage with the world and getting enough XP games to over level enough to make it like a perfect stealth game, even more than I thought it could be. Like I eventually because you can upgrade your hidden blade like to a certain degree that every enemy that you fight except big boss battles enemies that sometimes you can find encampments can all be one hit killed. And with Odyssey, you had to like spec through the assassin builds for you to be able to do the one hit kills, in that case with your hidden dagger. And I didn't realize that it was and the good thing is that it feels simple. It doesn't feel overwhelming because this was Ubisoft's first attempt at making Assassin's Creed more of an RPG, but some real great storytelling that really builds Bayek as a character in so many different areas, especially because that game is a redemption of him having killed his own son in accident because of like the order of the ancients kind of forcing him to, and him finding families going through same kinds of loss, and you're doing that and you're doing those side quests that let you learn more about them. You learn more of Bayek and kind of like his mindset, and kind of see an idea of where the assassin order eventually comes from. All of this is in the side quests because the main story is very it's a revenge tale by him and Aya, his wife, towards like the order of the ancients that eventually become the Templars. But now getting to engage with this world this way, unlocking everything and getting to lose myself in this desert in its gold pristine color palette, it was enchanting. It was the exact game I needed in this post Elden Ring point that I was in, moving away from like the Soul series, because I finally cheated myself out of that after Dark Souls 2, and then doing the DLC that takes you to Mount Sinai, which for our upbringing, it's a very interesting point in time in the Bible, and getting to see that and how it builds as like the first official thing you ever see the Assassin Order do. And even having like, because you're against the Romans at that point, and there's like, you see crucifixions happening. So it's like, there's some striking imagery happening there. And I'm like, yeah, this is like very evocative. I haven't seen that from Assassin's Creed in a while. And now I'm doing the Curse of the Pharaohs DLC, which is the precursor of what they ended up doing with Atlantis, the fate of
they added the mythology and stuff.
Yeah,
like
that was their first attempt at doing that, and it's a Meteor DLC, so I have to play more of that. But I've been playing a lot of Assassin's Creed that I also needed to like play something else before I hit that burnout point. But in the little that I played of the Curse of the Pharaohs, it still has that Egypt. There's something about Egypt that feels kind of like ancient, like it feels eerie and ancient, and engaging with the Egyptian mythology is very appealing. Especially like because you have to, the Curse of the Pharaohs isn't the name, it's like you have to deal with old pharaohs that have come to life due to a piece of Eden, and you go to like their version of the afterlife. I sent a picture in our groups about me going into this version of the afterlife that is like a gold, this gold area that's like full of like gold plant, and you see
gladiator scene.
Yeah, kind of like a gladiator scene, and on top of that you fight like giant scorpions. So
I did think I saw a few screenshots with them. That's that was an interesting little choice they made to throw those in.
Yeah, it's like this is the like this mythological DLC is when Assassin's Creed loses any semblance of reality, which they always toy with it not being fully real with the whole first civilization, the Isu thing that they always deal. So it's like, to me, it's just like the next step, but it's cool seeing the first time that they're delving to it, because I know that the Dawn of Ragnarok DLC for Valhalla that I haven't played because I haven't played much of Valhalla. It's like that goes more down the deep end with the mythological stuff. So Assassin's Creed Origins, if you have Xbox Game Pass, play it. I tell you, it's like, especially if you have an S or an X, the 60 frames patch, it just makes it feel like a new game. It's such a stunning world, really fun game. And I'm just glad that I was able to go back to it. It's like, it really is one of Ubisoft's very best open worlds they've ever made. And after that, I played another game that we did a little bit of our split deal, Trek to Yomi.
We bought it. I haven't downloaded it yet.
So I played it a little bit. I had an initial kind of like red flag that I didn't see that there's a performance mode there. So it's a game stuck at 30 frames right now. Hopefully I did something wrong and that game can be a 60 frames game, because it's weird going back to slower moving games. And I'll say this, I like the visual style of this. I hate the combat. The combat doesn't feel good. If anything, this has made me appreciate Ghost of Tsushima a little bit more. Because remember, I like Ghost of Tsushima. I don't love Ghost of Tsushima. That's a game that I always wanted to love more than I actually do. I liked it enough to get a platinum trophy, but it's like I didn't get far with the Kishima Island DLC. I dropped it like really quick, or not out of like anything. It's just like it didn't compel me. I don't know. There's something about samurais that I like some idea of it more than I like them in general, I would say.
It's the same thing that happened to me with Horizon.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like I'm all about sci-fi. It's like you're all about samurai. So but if Director Yomi did something, it's like maybe I should reinstall Tsushima and do that because it's like at least I'm not gonna that in from a gameplay perspective. Ghost of Tsushima was solid. Director Yomi is like it's more of a looker. I like its style. It's like it's even framed like a movie. It has like the top bottom black bars, but it feels a little bit more shallow than I wanted it to.
How does the combat actually work for it to not really vibe with you?
It just, I think it's again my frame rate snobbiness. It just doesn't feel precise enough. It doesn't feel like because there's something about Tsushima that feels like something. There's something you can get into like a good vibe with it that I'm not making, but you should try it. Maybe it's just me again, like unearthing my general not a huge fan of samurai stuff, but yeah, didn't fully vibe, but it looks nice. I'll say that. However, due to a certain game that got a really nice presentation in one of the recent showcases that we're going to talk about recently, I bought Diablo 2 Resurrected because it put me like a Diablo itch. And let me tell you, this is an incredibly impressive visual remaster in both looks and maintain, because there's remaster work can sometimes miss the point of the original art. Like when like you remember how a game looks, and a remaster can make something look much better, but then loses something special in the process. Yeah. Like what Vicarious Visions did with Diablo 2 Resurrected is pretty impressive, especially because they did the Halo Master Chief Collection from Halo 2 1 and Halo 2 option that if you press a button, you can switch between the old graphic style and the new one. And Diablo 2 is a 2000 game that's sprite based. So it's basically sprites from like a top-down perspective, and seeing it move into like a more 3D looking perspective, but maintaining apart from what I read, it's like this game is exactly the same as people remember it. Like they didn't add new mechanics, they kept everything intact. And Diablo 2 is very, I don't know, is that there's many people really stan Diablo 2, especially versus Diablo 3. It's like, because obviously Diablo 3 legendarily bad launch that eventually turned itself around with Reaper of Souls. In fact, that's the first of that kind of game before we start getting all the comeback stories that happen with like Destiny and the like. Looters, of course. There's something charming about the simplicity of Diablo 2. At the same time, it is a very obtuse game where if you're very into the idea of looting many things, you have to make very smart choices with what you decide to loot and keep, because your inventory space is garbage. And if you die in the field, you lose everything. You have to get back to that spot. What does it remind you of? This is a game that also has strength and dexterity. I think I see where From Software got some inspirations from. Oh. It has some of those tiny quirks that is like, I think people that played this game back then, it's going to be like walking back, like jumping back into the motorcycle, getting some muscle memory back in, because I can see people that fell in love with this thing in 2000 just jumping in because it is an exact remake. However, I reinstalled Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls yesterday. Yeah. And let me tell you, I don't understand the rose-colored tinted glasses that people have over Diablo 2 to say that they prefer that game over how good the quality of life is in Diablo 3. I can give them some credit with the visual style, because the visual style of Diablo 3 is very World of Warcraft. It's like brighter, while Diablo 2 is like way darker. This is the kind of thing when you say that you had an edgy face, this is what I think of when I think of edgy face, because it has that kind of dark, dreary aesthetic that you can see with Diablo 4, that they're going back to that. Diablo 3 doesn't have that, but from a mechanics perspective, it's like, I tell you, I played this thing all night yesterday. It felt like getting wrapped, because I played Diablo 3 way back then when I got it in 2014 on PS4. it's like kind of like Odyssey was for me. It's like wrapping yourself in a warm blanket. It's just, it clicks just right. It's like, it's such a satisfying game to go back to. And now I'm like, should I really just power through Diablo 2? Because I'm really liking Diablo 2 despite its aginess, and getting more impressed with the remaster work the more I dive deep into it, considering how old it is. But Diablo 3 is just so good. and they've been doing seasonal work for Diablo 3 that I didn't even know. It's like, yeah, welcome to season 26. I was like, what? 26 seasons of this? So they have been like keeping that thing on with like seasonal content because they didn't do DLCs after Reaper Assault.
Yeah.
Can't wait to play more, especially as we lead into the release of the sequel. But enough of that, Paul. We have to talk about the big showcase that happened this last Sunday. So press X.
News.
So Paul, we're doing something interesting that you haven't done yet, but I once did back in November, where we are inserting something into the episode after we had done the recording. So in the time that I was editing the episode that's going live, Square Enix and Capcom had two streams of my interest. The Capcom one was the 10th anniversary of Dragon's Dogma, and the Square Enix one was a celebration for Final Fantasy VII in general because of the 25th anniversary. And let's just say that both of these streams delivered big on things people have wanted for a while. So
I'll say,
Paul, what did Square Enix announce at this thing?
They announced so they kind of gave us a couple of updates and whatever, but the thing, do you want me to just jump into what I was really excited about? Say it. So they're remastering / remaking Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII. Which,
for people that listen to episode 53 of the X Button, that's Paul's favorite PSP game of all time.
Yes.
And a game that's not available to be able to be acquired like digitally in either the PSP or the PS Vita. Like, that's been a game that's been lost to time somehow.
Yeah, completely. And it's a travesty because I feel like, especially during that PS3, early PS4 era, it would have absolutely sung. But they decided to just not quite from the ground up, because it looks like the movements are exactly the same as the way they were, like exactly running animations, moving. The only thing that's really changed, of course, is the textures and lighting, and the voices are. I realized why things sounded weird is it's because Zach and certain other characters are voiced by their remake voice actors, which understandably, because they kind of, I'm sure, want to merge that whole storyline for people just to make it clear, especially after the events of Final Fantasy VII Remake, where they kind of mentioned Zach, but you're just kind of left to realize the significance of that on your own. So
or it's more like if you knew what happened, because there's like a little glimpse of the big pivotal moment of that game near the end, and it giving some clues that things may be different based on all the shenanigans that dominated the final fifth of that game.
I'm glad that you got to actually, like, they showed at the start the cinematic that I've been talking about, where he's facing off against everybody, and like they played a similar version for Remake, but that was like the original one, I think, even unchanged. So I'm curious to see if they're going to add the same cinematics that were in there, because there are some really great ones. There's a whole fight scene between Sephiroth, Genesis, and Angeal that was just like the stuff AMVs were made of back in the 2010s. And I could gush about this for a while, so I need to make sure I stay focused.
Yeah, so now real quick, is the combat of Crisis Core time-based, or is it like Kingdom Hearts? Like,
it's like Kingdom Hearts. You can mash the attack button as much as you want.
Awesome.
I'm kind of flipping through it right now. And yeah, so there's an attack button. There's at the bottom right, there was always like an item listing, and you would just kind of like flip through and hit the button on whichever item you wanted. That would take a second. You had your MP, and I think there was
there was something else at the bottom left, but the main thing was the top left that everyone talks about was the DMW system.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the roulette wheel that was, while you're fighting, it's constantly resetting this roulette. And every time it lands on the same numbers, you get a special attack that does something random. That's one thing that a lot of people didn't like, especially later on in higher difficulties, because if you got screwed over by a bad special attack move, that would be your move, and then it had to reset the whole process again. But some of them would heal you and buff you. Some do like this amazing damage to one enemy. Some do a little bit of damage to all enemies, and it just depended. So it's interesting to see that they just brought that back straight up. So I'm a little concerned about how well it's going to age, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, oh, so this was like very PSP combat, and old school, like birth by sleep, I guess.
People enjoyed Kingdom Hearts 3 combat, and that's still PS2-ish. So I don't think people would complain too much.
Well, I think Kingdom Hearts 3 really modernized some of it, in fact, by going back to the original, where they could spam magic and stuff like that, which they could here. So that's one of the good things that you can get out of it. So I think there's going to be a market for it. I think anybody who wants to know the true story of it is going to be totally fine. I'm a little concerned about the last half plot, because it gets a little off the rails near the end, because they had like a really solid idea building up to this certain turning point, and then the entire like last 5 hours of the game is Zach like kind of on the run and stuff, and they just kind of feel like they're coming up with crazy ways to line up characters, kind of like the last 10 minutes of Revenge of the Sith. They're like, all right, we got through the cool stuff, now we got to make sure we explain where everybody goes to line up with A New Hope. And so that's kind of what they do here, where they're like, all right, all these cool characters that you know from different parts of Final Fantasy VII got to go their way, so let's take a really long cutscene or several minutes of
here's where everyone is now.
more or less in some ways, but then thank God they tighten it up right at the end, and they really send you on your way into such a good last hour and a half, roughly. I mean, maybe more. My math is bad.
Yeah, but I'm just so glad that now this is going to be available in pretty much every system that you would want this to be. Like, they announced that this is coming on to PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, Switch, and Steam. So this game that was so unavailable now is going to be so available. And the best part, it's coming this winter, which is December to February. That's winter.
It blows my mind.
That is this close?
Yeah, it's... Gosh, I didn't believe that I could even see it again. I kind of was starting to lose faith that I'd ever really get to play this game again. And just the fact that I'm seeing it, that everybody else is going to get to experience what all of us got to experience, seeing the memes of people playing through the game is going to be really entertaining.
Like, there was like with the PS Plus Premium / Extra that has recently come out, and it having PSP games, a lot of people were like hoping, like, okay, they're doing PSP. There's very few PSP games that are big that everyone will want to see back. Is this how Crisis Core comes back? Look, this is what I was saying about a bunch of PS3 games. Just remaster them.
Yeah.
Instead of just giving us streamed or old versions. It's like, they just give us a remaster that can be on consoles that are going to last for much longer, and then those games can just survive the test of time going forward.
The more oh yeah, go ahead.
I'm just so glad that I finally get to experience it after hearing so much about it. Many people like gush about it.
Yeah.
And that it's so
you get to finally experience it. I'm really glad, and I know I am gonna love to see like your raw reaction to it, and I know you're gonna hate some parts, and then you're gonna be like, oh, I see why, and then you're gonna be like, this is terrible, and then you're gonna say, oh, this is amazing. Oh man. But I did want to just mention one thing you said about the remastering, and I think that might even be the way to go, because the more I've gotten into the knowledge of game design, the more I've realized that something like this is getting easier and easier to do, because assets like this are so much easier to make now. And like,
technology
this is no longer right. This is no longer like pushing the boundaries of what's possible. This is just, it looks like a PS4 game, but that's all you needed. Like you almost didn't even need to do much except upres it, and I'm sure there was issues transferring PSP stuff to now. So it's like, yeah, just make a few details, change some UI around, and then just keep most of the rest of it, and we've got like the bare bones of this whole game that's going to print money for us. So
yeah,
I'm glad.
Yeah,
I'm so glad.
And the thing is that this wasn't even the one thing that they announced at this stream.
This is just what I popped off for.
Yeah, because they initially like announced that Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate is coming to Steam. So like the up-res version that we got on PS5 last year and the Juffy DLC are not going to be available on Steam, and it's Steam Deck optimized. They specifically mentioned the Steam Deck, so like kind of like
I thought I saw that, but it made me curious. So it's like just fully like, hey, we made sure we made this so that you could play it on the Steam Deck without issues. Is that what they're saying?
Yeah, that is because there's like the Steam Deck can play many PC games well. Others can play them, but you need to like tweak it and in the PC settings for it to like properly run at that thing. The fact that they specifically mentioned that, it's again something that I mentioned in our episode that everyone's gonna like listen later on, that the Steam Deck has been such a success for the people that have been able to cop one, and getting more like seeing it like developers specifically acknowledge it. It's a good way for that system to feel like it's not just gonna be a Valve one and done or something that's just gonna kind of pass by, because I said that thing was gonna be dead in the crib whenever they were gonna put it out. I vaguely
remember that too, and I was like, no, buddy, I think this one might be it.
Yeah,
and I'm so glad
it was more because of the release. They released it in the middle of the February bloodbath.
That's right.
So that's why I was like, yeah, they're killing it in the crib.
That's a good point.
Because the people that really wanted it was like slowly gonna get it, because they're doing like this slow rollout where you're like in tickets, basically. You're like, yours would probably get here on Q3. There's the people that got it on Q2 recently. That's how I started hearing more the discourse that the Steam Deck is freaking awesome. So I will definitely wait, because I just recently made a purchase of something that is coming out later. Because it's funny that in that episode we're talking about how we're gonna experience some of the Xbox stuff, especially with you that you don't know if your PC is gonna run it. I think my PC could run it. I just bought a Series S, and it's coming in a few weeks. I bought it for $269.99. So
what do you think? You're not getting this on that, are you?
No.
Wouldn't you want, I was gonna say you'd want that on the PS5.
That's the thing. Like the Series S for me is gonna be a Game Pass machine. Okay. If a game is gonna be in Game Pass, I'm gonna try it there. And if I really, really like it, it could be like I can make the decision. Do I want to just stay here? Does it look great enough here? Or do I want to upgrade to try to buy a piece? But at least I know I will like this. So that's going to be like a good testing ground for me to get there, especially because the Series S was so cheap and it's Game Pass. Right. So they didn't say this is on Game Pass. So this is definitely like, to me, like Final Fantasy is synonymous with PlayStation. So that's where I would get it personally. So what's funny is that Xbox is getting Crisis Core, but it's not getting Final Fantasy VII Remake still.
I noticed that. Yeah. It's kind of funny to me that they're like, yeah, you could have the spin-off game for the PSP, but no, we're not giving you remake.
Yeah, and now there's like there's rumors that originally when the Final Fantasy VII Remake was announced, that was at E3 2015. That was not like announced as Remake Part 1. The whole division of different parts happened
that was
later.
Yeah, I remember
that's how they announced
Everyone
it.
Everyone got really pissed off at first.
Yeah, because
they were like,
it was because they like Square Enix again, because sometimes things get lost in translation. They use the term episodic. When you think episodic, you think Telltale.
Very different, yeah.
So that's why people lost their minds. But what they ended up doing, which they finally revealed here, is just pull a Final Fantasy 13, a trilogy of games for like one sub-series. Yeah. So, which our friend PJ was like saying, like, I don't understand why people like this. I'm like, it was good that you were out, because I was gonna go on a tirade of the ignorance for why people are excited for this.
Oh, dude, yeah. I had such a I was in the middle of getting out of a Bible study personally, and I saw that. Yeah. I was looking for this one meme where it was like me saying, "Sure, PJ," because I love using that one on him. And I think the Squidward meme worked better because
it's just ignoring the ignorance.
Ignorance of like this man who champions Sonic and all the other stuff that's getting clowned on right now is like, I don't understand why people like Final Fantasy. Okay, Dragon Quest nerd. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
sure, PJ.
No, and the thing is that I gave them an explanation. It's like, yes, I can see why people, you would ask why people like Final Fantasy if you were just off of 13. It's a trilogy of games that was so derided because not only was Final Fantasy 13 not that well received by the general community, even though it reviewed well, it was the fact that Square Enix kept staying on Final Fantasy 13 by giving 13 2 and then Lightning Returns. It was like they're giving you more games of things that people have said they don't really like.
Yeah.
So I can see that. And then 10 is, some people absolutely love 10. There's some people that are a little bit more divided in how talky that game is. And Final Fantasy 12 is a game that historically is like a tale of two games because it had to switch directors halfway through the project. So there's like a way within that game that it looks like two different things. But Final Fantasy 7 is the thing that made Final Fantasy popular. It's like Final Fantasy 7 Remake, ending shenanigans aside, was super well received. Was in Game of the Year list. People absolutely adored the work on that remake. And
watching the trailer made me want to re-download the game by itself.
Yeah, I've been waiting for a reason to replay it like in the PS5 version because I have it there. And that's what I love about knowing when sequels are imminent, because this is the time to like catch up again, to like refresh.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to take a second. I was brainstorming this idea, talking about why Final Fantasy VII specifically was such a resonating process. So if you'll give me a couple of minutes, I wanted to kind of like rant on this because I was breaking down the concept of why Final Fantasy VII was great. And it's the perfect urban fantasy. Mm-hmm. And building into that is, I mean, you've got the modern aesthetic, you've got the modern technology, you can do so much with that, but then you've also got a very specific energy source that can do whatever you want it and need it to do in the game. It can fuel cybernetics, it can be a life force, it can be a soul thing, it can do magic, and so it just allows you to do all of these things where something like normal fantasy, epic high fantasy, for like Final Fantasy 14 for instance, you can only do so much with that before it becomes like steampunk, because the very nature of it is more medieval Renaissance style. But when you go into like modern first and then you reach back, then you can do something like having Midgar being this hyper, like almost steampunk but mostly cyberpunk style city in some ways. And then you take 10 feet outside and you get farmland that looks more medieval, and it just allows you to do whatever the heck you want in this world. And because that, and then the characters are just so fleshed out, and the people that make Final Fantasy are freaking geniuses, and they just reuse all the same monsters and everything. They use the same magic system. They don't have to come up with all this crap.
They got Sid is in all of them basically.
Yeah, and even now, like the deities are pretty much always the same. There was like maybe a bit of back and forth in the earlier games, but now it's like just solidified. You know exactly
the Leviathan, Bahamut, Ifrit.
Yeah. And you could just make crap up from there because you have the bare bones for an entirely different world every single time you do it. And so when you merge something as deep like that, almost Lord of the Rings level of mythology, but then you put it in a modern setting, you get this perfect mishmash. And that's why stuff like Percy Jackson and Harry Potter goes freaking nuts, because you just have all this basis for something that's already set with more of a relatable environment to go with, and then you just throw in giant swords and call it a day, and then everyone goes crazy.
And especially like now that I have seen and read some of Berserk, like seeing such big Berserk influence in Cloud and Zack with like the big great sword. So it's like and also not only that, like Final Fantasy VII was what introduced so many people into role-playing games. That was the game that broke into the mainstream. That was one of the games along the original Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2 and Metal Gear Solid that defined the PlayStation era, because Sony now has many first-party studios that make the first-party exclusives for them, but the PS1 early on didn't have that. It was defined by this genre-defining games. So that's why 7 it's gonna always command that love and like fan fervor that you don't get from other Final Fantasies. So obviously right now, Final Fantasy 16, there's excitement for it because the Final Fantasy 14 guys are doing it. Final Fantasy 14, the most beloved modern Final Fantasy right now, which is insane considering it was a disastrous MMO of a launch. So So, and there are other Final Fantasy VII stuff that they announced here. They gave us season 3 of the Battle Royale, like Final Fantasy VII First Soldier, which I didn't even know was out.
I kind of forgot it came out. Yeah. But I mean, like, that's one of the many reasons why, similarly to Star Wars, Final Fantasy VII seems like the perfect, more grounded example of you can kind of do whatever with it. Mm-hmm. And like you get this third person almost shooter because you've got super soldiers in it and you can just kind of go with that. You can do something like Ever Crisis, which is retreading things in more chibi art style.
Exactly. And that's the other thing that they announced, that there's going to be a beta for that, for iOS. And what's funny is that during that stream, I was like, man, Ever Crisis looks so good. It's a Crime is just on iOS, but then that's when they hit us with Crisis Core. And
it's like you were reeling over like, oh, woe is us, we don't get Ever Crisis, because I mean that's probably the most faithful example of Final Fantasy VII in a modern way that people really wanted back then. Because when it goes into the combat, it goes into like the remake cinematics, but it's got that chibi style that's very
when you're like moving around, which is like, if you play the PS1 version of Final Fantasy VII, which is available right now on Game Pass and PS Plus Extra, it's like that's how you moved in that world. It was like top down, like chibi looking.
That was all you had the ability to back in the day. And I'm kind of chipping through this, and I completely forgot that it's Crisis Core plotline, Final Fantasy VII's plotline, and I think the other mobile one that I'm blanking out on the name of.
I don't remember that, but I think there's some Advent Children in it also, based on something that you see from Sephiroth, because Advent Children had like the 3 separate Sephiroths that then like merge, I think, into the return of like the big main one.
Yeah, because he got like split into different dudes. Advent Children was weird.
Yeah, so it was like a Kingdom. It's basically later Kingdom Hearts. What happened with Xehanort?
I didn't even notice it, but there's completely alternate costumes for the characters in Ever Crisis. Like in the cinematics and stuff, like Cloud's got this samurai outfit, Tifa's wearing a sweater, and Aerith has like this Luna Freya white dress on. It's crazy looking, the stuff that they did. I really want this to come to console, because this might be the new de facto way for people to experience the regular game.
Yeah, the old one.
Because as we've established now, Remake is not following what happened.
And it's no longer called Remake, because at the end of the stream, they have following Crisis Core. They give you the 1-2 punch. You're getting Crisis Core Reunion, and you're getting Part 2 of Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is not called Remake Part 2. It's called Rebirth. So in typical Nomura fashion, he loves the RE word.
He does.
Yeah, he absolutely loves. So wait for Part 3 to be called Revengeance.
Oh gosh, I just bought that on Steam actually. It's $7.
Yeah, I bought it for $5 on Xbox. So
nice. But I'm just looking at this, walking through that flashback segment of Cloud and Sephiroth going into the Nibelheim, I think.
Yeah.
They made like the almost identical name for the enemy kingdom in Final Fantasy 15, and it's messed me up ever since. But yeah, all of that, seeing what's going to happen next with Zach's whole storyline, those voiceovers, and then very curious.
Yeah, especially the if you read the beginning of that Rebirth trailer, it's about like the past is set in something about the past being set in stone, but the future is unknown, something like that. Yeah. It's them basically confirming many people's fears, quote unquote, like the periods that they're gonna be toying around with, like the story of Final Fantasy VII. That this project is no longer just you watching the original game being like faithfully retold in like better graphics. This is something new. Like the plot here now finally goes forward with Into the Unknown, and to me that's exciting in a way, because as someone that knew of the story of Final Fantasy VII original but never fully played that game, just knowing that now I get to experience something new. That is not something that, this is not Game of Thrones seasons 1 through 5 that if you really want to just go to Wikipedia and spoil yourself for the story. It's like now, it's like, are they really going to change the big stuff? Are they introducing new stuff? Or is it eventually just, and it's just going in these different directions that end in the final spot? I feel they're being really like batshit crazy about the things that they're willing to change. And this is gonna be Rian Johnson Last Jedi. That's going to divide the fandom.
Very divisive, unless they just allow you to make the choices yourself, and that means that you can theoretically play it so that you get the plot of the original. I think it's going to be just it's going to be a bloodbath of people going back and forth and really hating decisions left and right.
Yeah, and I think like the big question is the big character dying? That I think that's like that's probably that's been the content, the forefront of all this, because that's such a pivotal moment, like emotional moment that pinpointed Final Fantasy VII into people's all-time favorite games because of just how much of a gut punch that scene was. And I don't remember exactly when in the game it happens.
It's like halfway through the game or something.
So technically, based on where we are with this Rebirth, is that where that's supposed to happen? So
that's if they keep to the pacing, most likely. That's what I think is that's going to be the focus near the end of this game.
I tell you, I want to play the old one now. I really want to play the old one. It's like
it's gonna be rough. I'll tell you right now.
Absolutely. I tried playing it before, and I was like, should I? But I'm like, I've learned to tough it out for old games. I feel like if I really, really want to play them.
It's almost like this is gonna sound terrible. It's almost like reading a history book, because you're like, this is how it was for all of these years ago.
I'm a history nerd. I like putting myself back to this is how things were. Like, I feel I have a good ability of transporting myself to like old stuff and meeting it on its terms. It's kind of like what I was telling you. Is like RE4 right now, it's dated, but I always manage to go back to that game every year, accept it on its terms, and I always have a blast and accept it like it's delivered design, and it works for me. So if I can do that with RE4, I feel I can try to go back to that one and finally just really experience it on my terms. Like, it's once in a while I do a turn-based RPG. Like the last one I did was South Park, The Fractured Butthole. So, and that one was quite an experience when I did it back in Christmas 2018. Yeah. But
I think it depends very heavily, because RE4 is a lot shorter, and I think it's still really fun.
Yeah, it's still long for Resident Evil standards, but yeah, it's not as long as Final Fantasy.
Right, Final Fantasy VII, like you'll sit there for just hours and hours and hours and hours going through all that. But my goodness, it has so much charm to it, that stuff that's been lost to time, game mechanics that just don't exist randomly.
Well, you've never beaten it.
I never beat it, but I played through most of it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find where to go at a certain point, and I just...
Yeah, I have gotten to the point where I'm just going to be using guides, especially like with this other stuff that was announced in parallel to this stream. But yeah, it's like they closed out the stream. It was fairly short, but the power of the announcements was such that I feel Square Enix won Key 3.
Gosh, I mean, it's almost like an apples and oranges things, though, because when you have to show so much, you lose a lot of that direct impact.
But so, then at the same time, remember what they showed last year, Square Enix, what they decided to show? That they showed something. Yeah, and they showed something that tortured you for an entire year.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of that going on, so that's a good point.
Yeah,
but
to me, it's like because we didn't talk about this in the main show, especially because we're gonna like after this, like in the normal episode, people are gonna hear our recap of the Microsoft showcase. I feel during this time of year, a great showcase is one that is paced well, and the quality of announcements are such that leaves you like the most excited. That's why I kept saying that the state of play out of all the things, out of all the presentations that we got to see for 2022 this year, at least from this E3 period. That's why that one's been my favorite, because it packed a lot of games that I really want to play, and it respected my time for like 30 minutes. The Xbox showcase that we're gonna recap after this. It's something that I enjoyed the majority of what they tried to do to fill out their year, considering their big vacancy after their big 2 delays. But there was so much of that stuff that was so unmemorable that we only remember until we read the recap, and it was in an hour and 30. And then the Summer Gamefest showcase by Keighley, which has ended up being like the worst one out of all of them now. It's like it promised that it was like paced weird by packing so much of the same kind of stuff from the very beginning, showed you 2 gameplay montages with Callisto Protocol and Modern Warfare. And you had kind of mentioned, like, does the fact that we had seen trailers before it blunted the impact of what we saw here? And from what I've gathered around, that actually happened.
Yeah,
The
I think if Redfall and Starfield hadn't been delayed, I think it would be a lot higher. But the fact that we still have to wait so long afterwards, yeah, I think it just definitely it wasn't like anyone's specific fault besides the pacing. That was definitely somebody's fault.
Yeah, and then in Keely's stuff, he decided to make his big bomb a remake with Last of Us Part 1, and he didn't have anything else, and that thing leaked. So the punch of that show was like, the punchline was already, you already knew the punchline, so it left that thing feeling weaker, and that's why a lot of people were so angry about that showcase, and it actually like hurt the position of Summer Gamefest as like a premier place for people to like debut their games, especially now that E3 has said, yeah, we're coming back next year, and they're going head to head. And now Square Enix, like in 25 minutes, if you're like, especially like, you have to caveat, if you're not a big Final Fantasy guy, maybe this isn't for you, but if you're a big Final Fantasy guy, I can't imagine watching this stream and not be very excited.
This is like everything that a Final Fantasy fan would want, unless you weren't a Final Fantasy VII fan. That's
exactly,
all.
Yeah, exactly. So you can caveat it there, but I feel like for a celebration of something, Square Enix shockingly did it well, considering they usually are always shockingly bad. Just watch last year's conference that spent 30 minutes on Guardians of the Galaxy and had to like blue ball us with Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 pixel arts that were just in PC, and the destruction of Babylon's Fall by it being a live service game, trying to save it a little bit by showing War for Wakandan Avengers, and then a little bit of a glimpse of more Outriders stuff, and Life is Strange True Colors, and my favorite of the whole time, Stranger of Paradise. So it's like that was their showcase last year, and it was
that was pretty bad actually.
Yeah, exactly. So now compare them, like focusing just on Final Fantasy, and just the idea now that, remember, Final Fantasy 16 is next summer. This winter is Crisis Core. Then the summer, if it doesn't punt slightly, like that's where they're aiming for Final Fantasy 16. They're basically polishing, and then remake. And then Rebirth that was announced here, along with like them being like, it's gonna be 3 parts. It's coming next winter as a PS5 only game. So it's like, everyone's gonna be eating good with your Final Fantasy, and that's crazy for Square Enix, which you're so used to them announcing something and waiting years for it. Nomura mentioned real quick in like a statement that they put out when Rebirth was put there, that they switched technologies and it's made development much easier. I tell you, Unreal Engine, it's what's saving that company, more than Luminous tools. And before we go back to like the other regular scheduled programming, there also has some Capcom stuff that we talked about with Resident Evil. Just little spoilers. They held that stream for Dragon's Dogma, the 10th anniversary, and they announced what we knew it was going to happen. 10 years later, the creator of Devil May Cry, or at least the recent director of the Devil May Cry series, he very happily announced that Dragon's Dogma 2 is actively in development. Yeah. And I tell you, it's like for fans of Japanese, of like that side of Japanese stuff, my Twitter timeline was grinning from ear to ear. It was like in the same day they finally got both their Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Dragon's Dogma 2, a game that the people that absolutely love Dragon's Dogma absolutely love it. And Gene Park, the guy from Washington Post, he said is like, I recommend Dragon's Dogma so much that I tell you, play with a guide. Get like warmed up, because that game has some real high highs. He said something that I don't know if it was a hot take. He said the highs of some of Dragon's Dogma's bosses are even better than those in Elden Ring. And he praised Elden Ring. So
boss-wise, I can agree with that, because Dragon's Dogma was so much more focused that it really focused on the experience, and that was like where you could hold a button and you'd like grab on like Shadow of the Colossus, and you'd get to like do the whole attack motions, and it was
less of just swinging a sword and hoping to see blood that keeps like lowering health, which is Souls-like. Even Elden Ring does it. That's how this From Software design is. So obviously, we didn't see much of that. Just the idea that Dragon's Dogma 2 is in development now. It's good that Capcom now is obviously Resident Evil is like booming right now. It's like the best. It's like it's riding such a high. Street Fighter being back and people being excited for that is like, that's really good for it. That's actually really good for them. Them seeing a Monster Hunter is like making them so much money, and now they're bringing Dragon's Dogma back, what other series could they bring back and be a disqualifier? Because now this is the Capcom you want making games. You didn't want 2014 to 2016 Capcom making games. Look what Street Fighter V was when it was that Capcom. Yeah. You want the post RE7 Capcom to be making all these games. So
I'm so excited about the way that Capcom's been doing things, and I think I realized it on recording one day where I was like, gosh, is Capcom my favorite developer now?
Yeah, and you mentioned something that they do dumb stuff, but I need to correct it. What kind of dumb stuff? They haven't done dumb stuff in like so long. Exactly, they used to back in that terrible era when Inafune left.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now because they've been doing so much detail and extra effort to like recapture the fans' trust. Left and right. I mean, the RE engine is so versatile that they're able to just build everything on the same engine like that.
They're building Dragon's Dogma and RE in the engine. That thing's gonna be nuts.
I'm so impressed that a developer was able to create an engine so good that they can do all that. I mean, the only other people that used to do that was Battlefield, really. I mean, other
Frostbite
people would, but that was Frostbite, the only one that would.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like,
succeed.
And Frostbite immediately showed that it's very limited. Like any game made on Frostbite that was not FIFA, like the RPGs made on Frostbite, like Andromeda and Anthem, Dragon Age Inquisition ended up being good, but technically you go back to that is that you can still feel the roughness of them doing it in Frostbite. Yeah. So it's like, and the only EA game that didn't use Frostbite in that era, Apex Legends and Jedi Fallen Order that used Unreal and Swords Engine.
Yeah,
that was the ones that worked well. So it was like, that Frostbite tool doesn't work, and look what happened to Battlefield 2042. Frostbite is no longer it's no longer like the king of the hill when it comes to engines, even though games look pretty, but it's like they're not functional. And RE Engine is functional. So that was that was our addendum, our pickup that we got to record. Thankfully, like this is why, Paul, like we're mentioning later in the show why we're hopefully pushing to try to push something for later in the week to kind of hit it immediately. But eventually we'll get there. So still, like, it's going to be a show that's being posted every Wednesday from 2 p.m. onwards, not necessarily as Wednesday, because sometimes you want to hit on this stuff. But now we're going back to the regular scheduling programming, and we're going to be talking about Xbox. All right, Paul, this Sunday at, I think it was my 11 at 12 Central Time, the Xbox Bethesda Showcase for 2022 happened, where they were going to make the case for why Xbox was going to be relevant for the rest of this year, because they had 2 big games delayed. I'll say this. They came in right out of the bat after like showing a couple of games saying that this was going to be a showcase for the next for what's coming to Xbox within the next 12 months. So it's like starting from that June, from like when we saw it, until the next showcase in June. So that's kind of like that was how they framed it. What do you think of what they showed? Just in general, before we read quickly what they
overall, I mean, they had some lows, but they did have some highs, and they had a good level of technical prowess, along with a few IPs that we've been looking for and a few that we just expected. But overall, there was also a lot of like either completely forgettable stuff or stuff that I'd never heard of that they acted like was a big deal. And I'm kind of curious to kind of go through them and then just kind of let y'all hear all of this.
My thing is that what makes me so sad in a way about seeing that presentation is that they didn't have a backup for the delays for both Redfall and Starfield, at least from like the big first party stuff. There's so many games that they have announced since way back in 2020 that I would have imagined they could have tried to work something out for them to be in this showcase, but they also caveated it within the show that it's just this is what's coming from the next 12 months. So beyond that, we're not talking much. I think it would have been good for them to say it ahead of time that this is the showcase for the next 12 months. And technically, I don't hate the idea, because I do like the idea of, okay, what am I eating for the next year? That I actually, because a lot of these showcases are a lot of promises. And this is not just an Xbox. Like PlayStation has given us many out there promises also. Look where we are with Spider-Man 2 right now. I think there's a good, healthy balance to have the things that you're going to eat right now. Yeah. And then just some excitement for beyond. They had one big thing that's like for far beyond that. We talked about it. We talked many rumors in this show before. We're gonna talk when we read that, but I feel they if they're gonna stick to this format, I don't mind it. I just hope that they also understand that they can pepper in right near the end more like future stuff, so because I think excitement can be cool for what you're eating right now, and then what you'll eat in the next year.
I don't know. In my head, I don't know if I've just gotten tired of people talking about things that aren't coming out for the next 2-3 plus years.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't really mean anything to me, because there's going to be so much changing. And usually you kind of know when something's in development, or if the possibility of it getting made into a sequel is very like tumultuous, for instance, then you're like, yeah, okay, confirming this would be nice to hear at least. But I almost don't want them to even bother with like a cinematic trailer or whatever it is, because I mean, just look at Beyond Good and Evil 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's just one example of many.
Yeah, and that's what I say is like, I appreciate the idea of like getting something that it's imminent, because at the end of the game, you want games to play. Right. Obviously, Microsoft has been plagued with the promise of things to come. That has been happening a lot. But to me, it's just insane to think. Just picture yourself in the scenario where they never got Bethesda. It was just their first party. They would have nothing for this year, like from them. And even with Bethesda, they technically don't have something, at least for the rest of 2022. They basically what's funny is that by them now setting up a June to June kind of like cadence, if this is what they're going to continue doing forward, it's at them for them to hide the fact that if you're expecting big stuff from Xbox for the rest of this year, you're shit out of luck. But if you don't mind having an open mind and trying stuff, because that's kind of like the beauty of Game Pass, I feel they filled up the rest of this year as best as they possibly could with A to AA stuff.
Yeah, that's where I'll give them credit, even though it feels like it's a bit middling, especially near the middle. They filled the gaps that we were worried about with something at least. And even though it might not be something for us personally, I know a lot of people are going to be popping off for some of the things listed here, whether they realize it or not. Once it comes out, it's going to make enough waves that people are going to try it out, and that'll cover them until the big Starfields and the next big Elder Scrolls and all that stuff.
Exactly. And while this doesn't preclude anything from potentially slipping further, they did put a picture of the games that are coming out, and it's kind of like, it's like the Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. They're shooting their shot of, this is what we're planning to having for you guys that are on Xbox and PC for the next year. Even
those
if
always remind me of those MCU show and Star Wars show spreadsheets where it's like, these are all the things coming in the next 5 years. And I was like, buddy, that doesn't make any sense. So the fact that it's like, this is the next year is like, oh, okay, well, this is like roughly within the next 12 months. I can get with that.
And I always say that even though much of these games don't have like even a solid release, they just have a year. At least you have the year. And at least they were like, hey, everything that we said 2023 is for those first 6 months. Because then when we get there, we're like starting the cycle anew. So, and even if one of those slip, then they could potentially slip for the fall. So it's still 2023. So they gave themselves some wiggle room. So let me read this real quick, because there's a bunch of these. They showed Redfall with a 4-player co-op gameplay thing with a release day of 2023. This was the game that was supposed to come out technically from next month forward if we had the previous release, because this was a summer 2022 game. So they also announced Silksong, the Hollow Knight expansion. People have been like screaming, Nintendo, please show it in any of your directs. It showed up here. Gonna be day one Game Pass, but no release date. So it gave a lot of Hollow Knight fans
that
blue
part
balls.
Was really funny.
Yeah, it gave them blue balls. High on Life, this is the game from Justin Roiland, the guy from Rick and Morty, that he did Traverse Saves the Universe for PlayStation VR. This is like an FPS with Oddworld style visuals. If you like Justin Roiland, this is an FPS by him, if you like that humor. Riot Games showed up here saying that they had made a deal with Xbox to get into PC Game Pass. And by being in PC Game Pass, you're going to get benefits for League of Legends, Wild Rift, Valorant, Legends of Runeterra, and Team Tactics. What this means is that these free-to-play games, because all of these are free-to-play, if you sign up to Game Pass, you basically get everything unlocked. That should matter. So all the champions are unlocked for both League of Legends things. All the agents are unlocked for Valorant. You get something called the foundation set unlocked for Team Tactics and Reterra. I don't remember which one of those two was.
Yep.
So, and it's coming this winter. A Plague Tale Requiem, the sequel to Plague Tale, apparently still coming out this year, but it only had 2022. It could slip, but it's going to be day one on Game Pass. Forza Motorsport, what's basically the reboot for Forza Motorsport.
Is that what they're calling it?
Yeah, just Forza Motorsport, because Forza Motorsport 7 was the last one that they did back in 2017. There hasn't been.
What makes it a reboot? There's not even a storyline.
Just then eliminated. This could basically be Forza Motorsport 8, but they just nipped the numbers.
People kind of drop off after numbers get high enough. So I guess they're just like, new engine or whatever.
Exactly. So, and I think there's something to be said about starting something with a 0 or a 1. So I can see that, especially if it's not narrative. So it looks better on screen, but this was a rumor to be like one of the things how they were going to fill up the fall, and they put a 2023 thing. More of that later. Microsoft Flight Sim, one of their big games from 2020 that then came to Xbox Series X last year. They announced
2 years.
Yeah, it's been 2 years of Flight Sim. They announced non-airplane editions, so like helicopters and a bunch of stuff, and a cool edition where you can fly as the Halo Pelican,
which will look really cool.
Yeah, and that's now available. Then Overwatch 2 showed up here to showcase more of the multiplayer, and they basically finally announced a release date of the PvP, because Overwatch 2 was the big thing. Why they are justifying a sequel was because they're doing a campaign also, but because this
supposed to be DLC.
Exactly. So because Overwatch 2 would never come out if they're still waiting on releasing the package. They pulled a Halo Infinite, and the PvP is being released as a free-to-play thing on October 4th this year, and multi-platform. So it's like if you're worried about what the acquisition would mean, they have basically not confirmed what they're doing. Games that have multiplayer in Activision, they're going multi-platform. Ara History Untold. This was a weird one because this is supposed to be a Civilization-style strategy game. They show no gameplay. They had made a point of showing a bunch of gameplay with all the things that we have listed. This was one of the ones they didn't.
They did the Age of Empires 4.
Exactly. But hey, no Trebuchet talk this time.
God.
Then they went into a middle section of this showcase where they talked about expansions for games they already had out. So Elder Scrolls Online, the annual expansion, it's coming out on June 21st. It's called High Isle. Fallout 76 is still alive and kicking for some reason. They are, despite this being the 25th anniversary of Fallout, the series, they didn't say anything about anniversary, and even though they mentioned it, but they're not doing anything big unless they drop some bombs at QuakeCon later this year, like they did last year with Skyrim anniversary that was announced in August. The expansion is coming at some point in September 2022. If you're one of the 10 people still playing Fallout 76, you have that. Forza Horizon 5 is bringing Hot Wheels back.
I'm glad they did this, because that was one of my favorite things they did in
4.
What was it? Yeah, Horizon 4. I love it. It's so cool. It's just such a dumb thing that I'm like, gosh, it just clicks. And
considering Forza Horizon 5 is their best received game, I'm glad Hot Wheels is there, because it's their best one. So Ark 2, the sequel to Ark, Survival, it's got
Vin Diesel.
It's got Vin Diesel here. Yes, and no gameplay showed. It's the 2023 thing. Scorn. This was showed at the Xbox third-party thing they did in May 2020. The one that had the big...
I honestly thought this came out a long time ago.
Yeah, it had not, but considering this is a big third-party exclusive that they've gotten next to the Warhammer thing we saw at the Summer Gamefest.
Oh yeah.
These are like time exclusives for Xbox. It's like, this is as close as you're gonna get for like big stuff, like big exclusive stuff if you need in Xbox for this. Scorn looks like a very gross survival horror kind of game. So if you're into that, it coming out in October. There you go. Flintlock: The Siege of Flock. This is a game that had looked like a little bit like God of War, but like low budget in a way. But it had an interesting art style that it still made me buy with it. It's coming out in 2023.
I just realized that the subtitle is so dumb.
Yeah, the Siege of Flock.
The Siege of Flock.
I know. it has double A energy. So Minecraft Legends, it's the action strategy take on Minecraft that it's also releasing in 2023.
Hang on a second. I'm going to stop you because the subtitle is Siege of Dawn.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know where that came from.
Okay. Thank you for that. So, wait, the Siege of what?
Dawn, like DAWN.
Oh, okay.
Like Zero
awesome.
Dawn.
Awesome. I had heard Dong.
Siege of Dawn.
Yeah. Flintlock, the Siege of, yeah. Flintlock, the Siege of Dawn. Okay, yeah.
Gosh. That's a different kind of game.
Yes. Lightyear Frontier. So some, not Buzz Lightyear. Buzz Lightyear out now in theaters.
I really thought that was like a Buzz Lightyear tie-in video game.
But no,
so
it's
confused.
like a space farming sim. So
honestly, that one looks kind of cute.
yeah, it is. Like I know this farming sims are not my thing, but farming sims are like many people's big jams. So
True.
because it's endless, it's like just endless entertainment. That's why like Minecraft is so successful. That's the kind of it's you can basically farm there.
Yeah.
Technically, yeah. Gunfire Reborn. This was like an FPS roguelike shooter with animals that look weird. That's coming out in October 2022 on Game Pass. So more Game Pass fodder.
Kung Fu Panda with guns.
Yeah. The Last Case of Benedict Fox. This is one that looked really, really interesting. It was like a 2D platformer, like mystery thing.
Mystery, yeah.
Yeah. So that's coming out in 2023. As Dusk Falls. This is like a Quantic Dream style narrative
That's
branch
probably
game.
a better description of what I was trying to like come up with a way to describe it, but it's like you can't really describe the art style unless you see it.
It's like an FMV stop motion thing.
It's like upsetting with the way that it is, but it's also really cool. And I can't describe it. Yeah,
it's coming out in July, so it's coming out soon. And it's what's interesting is that it's an 8-player co-op game, so you can play that with 8 players
like,
and do.
What was it? The Dark Pictures anthology style.
Yeah, which by the way, Man of Medan and Little Hope are both on PS Plus Extra.
Which is funny.
Yeah,
it is interesting.
But House of Ashes isn't. So
that's probably because they still want people to buy it.
Yeah, it's because it's the most recent one. So
yeah,
they can extract more juice out of it.
Always.
So as Dusk Falls, if you're interested in that branching narrative game with like many different permutations, that's coming out on July 19. Naraka Blade Point. This was like a game from China that's like a combat thing, like a fighting game battle royale.
I got it mixed up with another battle royale fighting game-ish Asian style game that came out on the consoles like a few months ago for free on PSN, and I cannot for the life of me remember what it was called, but I thought this was like the same game for a minute, and apparently it's a completely different one.
Yeah. So, and that's basically out in a few days. So something, and also on Game Pass. Again, a bunch of these things are on Game Pass, with the exception of Overwatch and Diablo, because they can't put them on Game Pass yet. Or the
can't just do that.
Yeah, they gotta like play well with the FTC yet. So Pentiment. This was like Jess Gordon from Windows from Windows Central Gaming, the big Xbox like journalist. He had leaked this before. He had said that Obsidian was allowing Josh Sawyer, the creator of Fallout, to do like an experimental kind of narrative game, and this was it.
Call it by name?
Yeah, Josh Sawyer. Yeah, Josh Sawyer.
The Pentiment.
Yeah, Pentiment. Name. Yeah.
Okay, because it sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. So that's
the thing is, Pentiment sounded like a code name for me. I thought that was a company. That's how the game is called, and it's this is their big for first party stuff. This is one of the two, like for the rest of this year. Even though this is like a small narrative game, if you're like into narrative style games from Josh Sawyer that gave you the old Fallouts, you're getting his game in November 2022.
And it's very aesthetically wise, very unique, because it looks like it's
medieval painting
out of like a medieval Renaissance painting, but it's like better animated than some of those other indie like Renaissance-ish.
Yeah, some people said it was like it reminded them of Disco Elysium, but as a medieval painting narrative stuff.
Yeah, that's a pretty good description actually, and more 2D than like that isometric perspective.
I'm interested. The beauty of Game Pass is that in my computer, at least supporting some of these games that I can try it, so I'll definitely try that. Grounded 1.0, Grounded, that early access Honey, I Shrunk the Kids style game against ants. That is a survival RPG that many people stand behind. Like
I'm shocked how many people love that game, but I mean, not shocked because it does look very good. It's just funny that like this one random indie game is like the one that has so many people.
It's not an indie game, Paul. It's from Obsidian.
Okay. Yeah,
it's an Obsidian game.
I don't know why it felt like an indie game when it came out. I guess because it was early access during that kind of era.
Yeah, but it's again, it's Obsidian pulling on an Insomniac for them and getting them games like that they can say it's first party and it's out here. So now this is the official release. Everything that people have been playing this on early access, they've been updating it over the last year and change. Now this is the 1.0 release, kind of like when Hades hit 1.0. So definitely gonna try that out quickly. Irvin Shadow Legacy. This is a sci-fi stealth game that I didn't really pay attention because if you watch my reacts that I put out with our friend PJ/JOK,
he watch it here on this channel.
Yeah, you can watch it here on this channel. It's already live. He was asking me how Xbox All Access at that point, so I was explaining him All Access. So I kind of like missed this, but it's like this is a sci-fi stealth game. You know how I'm with stealth. It's like
which I found out. Okay, well, that can actually wait. Never mind. Sci-fi stealth games. It had like a cool style to it, which had me kind of curious about it. But I do hope that it gets a little more substance than just what I was seeing. But I do like the way the robots look. Yeah.
And then that was followed up with Diablo 4 that initially we didn't think it was Diablo 4 because if you also see my reacts, I said,
go back and see that.
Yeah. I said, it was like, State of Decay. That one was a fun one to watch with PJ because PJ is big on Diablo.
Yeah.
So him being like, that's not Diablo. It'd be like, wait. and before he finally realized and getting to see all that gameplay was, I'll say this.
I really like that gameplay.
Yeah, Diablo 4 is the game of the show for this showcase.
What's actually going to be coming out in the next 12 months for sure.
And it's multi-platform also, but
which is what I'm happy about.
Yeah. It was again them confirming. It's like, we're not sealing away games for big communities because you can't say that you want gaming to be for everyone and making multiplayer games only for your platform. So plus they need the FTC to allow to approve this thing. So I can see that. Yep. There was this Sea of Thieves quality of life update coming on July 21st about like fixing some you can customize ships, you can put names, you can like loot easier.
I really like that one.
It was like because it was done in like a infomercial kind of way. It had charming.
It was cute. I'm so glad Sea of Thieves succeeded.
Sea of
I wish
Thieves
it was
is one
easier
of
to play by myself.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's like I wish this would be a game that I play. This would be a great one to like because Zach has an Xbox now. Yeah. This would be a great one to just gather around and be like, let's play some Sea of Thieves because that game has grown from an embarrassment into one of Microsoft's most successful exclusives from the Xbox One era that also came to PC because it just kept growing.
It's like the perfect blend of style over hyper realisticness and just constantly being okay with putting out a little bit of content at a time. And now you just have this full fleshed out world.
Game Pass was made to make that game successful.
Absolutely.
So, then Ravenlock was announced, which was an Alice in Wonderland pixel RPG that looked interesting.
I did like it. I love the style of all the monsters and the way like the creativity that was used. It's like a lot of people just kind of put weird antlers on things and call it a day. But this one looked really genuinely unique, and I want to see more gameplay of it. But
2023
curiosity.
So, and this one got my attention because of how much I love their other games. Cocoon, which is the next game from the Inside and Limbo devs. Their first game since 2016 when Inside came out. This is like a space puzzle game, but I feel this is the you got my trust after your other two games. I'm definitely gonna try it.
It's
again,
definitely not as much my aesthetic, but it's like it moved very smoothly and it was very interesting the way you could like zoom in like a fractal each time you'd place like the orb. And it was just interesting. It was almost like what I had pictured with Ratchet and Clank, whenever you'd kind of like zoom in, like there's that kind of quirk style of gimmick. That's the word of the way that you can do technology nowadays. So I'm curious.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. And then we reached the point where this was a bigger deal for Xbox than you would anticipate. Xbox in Japan with Japanese apps, they haven't been like this for a little bit. This was them basically flexing and saying that they're fixing a long time problem for them. First was Wulong Fallen Dynasty. This is a game by Team Ninja that's multi-platform, but they're finally getting another multi-platform game again because Team Ninja, well, technically they got Stranger of Paradise, but that was like through the Square Enix. But them, like Team Ninja was Ninja Gaiden for them. Like Ninja Gaiden was big on Xbox back then, and then something happened to that relationship and it split. When Ninja Gaiden used to be like the big Japanese thing that Xbox could flaunt about. This was a game that they didn't quite say the what exactly is this kind of game. At least from the trailer show, they didn't show if it's like is this like Ninja Gaiden? Is this like Dynasty Warriors? Is this like Neo? Is this a mix of all of these? But what you know is that this is a game that they mended the relationship is coming day one to Game Pass, even though it's also on PlayStation. This next one though, Persona 3 Portable, Persona 4 Gold, and Persona 5 Royal coming to Xbox Game Pass and PC. They finally got one of the bigger JRPGs into their systems. This was a series that Sony had ironclad from the PS2 and PSP to the PS Vita and then PS3 and 4. And there was just no sign that Atlas was ever going to come and do something with Xbox.
Specifically say at one point that they were like, no, we don't want to do that.
Exactly. No, they literally said that. And whenever Solar Ashen 2, I think that's what it's called, was announced as a day and date with Xbox and PlayStation for later this year.
Solar Ash was Atlas?
Yeah, not Solar Ash. It was Solar something.
Okay.
That game had an English dub trailer at the Summer Gamefest. That's when you know it's like, okay, maybe they're finally mending and they're making it that the Xbox can get JRPGs again. So
yeah,
big deal. Persona 5 Royal is coming out on October 21st, 2022 on Game Pass for both Xbox and PC. So
I say good for all those people that haven't played it yet, because I mean, it's going to be some hot takes. I say just skip 3 and 4 and just play 5.
Oh God, people are gonna come at you. They're gonna devour you because 3 and 4 are.
Do it.
Yeah.
3 and 4 aren't that fun to play. I said it.
Now, have you played Portable and Golden? Because old versions are not good. These are like the best versions.
I watched my roommate play through all of Golden over his shoulder, and it just did not seem like something that was fun.
Because you're like watching him play a handle game. Of course, that's not going to look fun.
Yeah, exactly. So it was very much one of those. If I had played this back on like PS2, I'm sure I would have been losing my freaking
Everyone
mind.
says that Vita version is the best way to play Persona 4.
Okay, maybe like on launch with Vita, maybe. But yeah, I even like 5 was awesome until I ran out of steam on it. But at least that one was really cool to navigate the menus. It was just really fun to go through the animated pieces of that. But anyway, Persona is awesome.
Yeah, and this is what makes people excited because of them announcing PC versions that are also coming to Steam. Steam Deck is out. The Steam Deck has been a success for the people that have Steam Decks that were able to cop one. People have been like praising that thing to high heaven. Yes.
Because I haven't heard anything about it. I guess because nobody can get one.
Yeah, exactly. For the people that have it, it's like everyone absolutely adores the Steam Deck. It's like,
well, that's really good.
They say it's like the perfect handheld. And being able to play these kinds of games again on like a handheld, because Switch got the shaft with Persona again, which is hilarious. I would have expected it to go to Switch first before ever going to Xbox, and they still don't get Persona games.
Wait, they only got the
Strikers.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, you can only get Strikers on the Switch.
I would have thought for sure that's like a no-brainer. Put Persona 5 on the Switch or any of them, really.
They are perfect handheld games. Wow. Everyone says that. So
all right, win for the Steam Deck.
Yes, and I'm glad that people really like the Steam Deck because eventually that thing will be able to be better mass-produced. You're like in a queue if you want one. So
dang.
Yeah, so it's weird, but people like. All the podcasts that I listen to have one, I said they praise that thing to heaven, and they're like, people are like playing God of War in this thing because it's on PC. It's amazing. They'll play Spider-Man there.
Oh,
it's cool things there. But then that wasn't enough with the Japanese stuff. They finally confirmed what Jeff Grubb gave us the tease last year because he had heard when the abandoned shenanigans were happening. Kojima is actually going to work with Xbox. There is going to work with a game he said that he's always wanted to make using the cloud because it's like new technology. And Microsoft is the only one that has invested in cloud technology. They've invested in it so much that freaking Sony made a memorandum of understanding with my Xbox to use that technology. Also, they're Azure servers. So of course that would happen.
Yeah.
Even though Kojima also then wanted, the Kojima Productions went to Twitter to be like, hey, just because we're doing an exclusive with Xbox, don't worry, we have good relationship with PlayStation. So it's like they're going to...
I mean, with how often everybody reads into everything he ever tweets, I am very glad that he just went ahead and officially said it, because I normally don't do any of that reading into things, but that would have made me think, oh, did something happen at Sony? Like, that makes me curious.
Well, when the Persona things were announced, they only came in with announcement that it was coming to Xbox, no sign of PlayStation. So everyone was like, hey, yo, Atlas, you on PlayStation okay? And then yesterday they put an updated thing that says that all the platforms that are coming, and PlayStation was there. So a lot of people sometimes read to it when it's like, these like Atlas and Kojima, they have been like very big partners of PlayStation. So that's why it's like a big deal. So it's not them forsaking PlayStation as much as them finally just playing both sides, basically. I think the big tell is going to be if Persona 6, it's either a PlayStation exclusive first, or if it comes multi-platform immediately. That's when you know that the relationships have changed. And then the show ended with Starfield with a 15-minute gameplay, Paul. So that was the Xbox showcase. And obviously Starfield was at the end. What do you think of Starfield?
So it really scratches a very specific desire for me. And I know you and I both kind of talked about it. And I mean, now
just to quote you from when you put in our chat, this is the first time you've hated that this is something exclusive to Xbox. And to that, I'd say that's why Microsoft bought them.
That's exactly what they wanted to do.
Yeah, for that.
I just hate that they were already working on it before the acquisition kind of happened. So that I'm like, I almost had this.
Yes. But also, let me bring this back. Sony almost got this as a time exclusive. When they got Deathloop and Ghostwire, they tried negotiating this.
Gosh, I can.
In fact, that's what prompted Xbox to just show the bigger D and just acquire everything. So blame Sony there. because Microsoft got a whiff of what they were trying to do, because
it's Fallout and Star Citizen situation all over again, because it's like the whole thing with like all the best space related simulators, flying, all of just the best anything space related is always only on PC. So like the first time it's something like that, anything close is coming to console, everyone's like, oh my goodness. And now, like, the first time that happens, Microsoft freaking buys exclusivity of it, because of course they would. So it's like, for me at least, it goes beyond the idea of just it's another exclusive that I wanted. It was like, this doesn't really exist outside of maybe No Man's Sky. And that's like your only option. Everything else is a wildly different kind of game. So it made me a little frustrated by that process. But
because in your situation, you would have to buy an Xbox to play this.
Yep. Unless I just really drop down the ability on the PC. And then you just don't really have fun.
Yeah, I need to see the specs for this thing, because I'll say this was a very hype presentation that also gave me a couple red flags. It's like, I understand why it was delayed. Frame rate was not good for what they show. I'll say this: Microsoft deserves many props for having shown so much gameplay in this presentation. Many things that came in with gameplay. They kept getting so lambasted over them relying too much on the CG trailer with like tiny bit of gameplay. Most trailers here were more dominated by gameplay snippets than just like this CG thing.
Credit for that. They at least showed a lot of gameplay in most of the things.
And I think that's why they switched to like the 12-month thing, because if something's going to come within 12 months, you got to show the thing being played or what it's going to look like. So even in its roughness, I appreciate that at least I now have an idea of how that game looks. It definitely looks like a desaturated No Man's Sky with Fallout.
Yeah, I don't appreciate how desaturated it is, frankly.
Which apparently that was like a bug that I was reading something that it was supposed to look a little bit more vibrant than it did.
So
we'll have to see more, because later in that demo, they showed more color in the different biomes. That's when like I started getting a little bit more excited, because I was like, okay, here's the palette variety that I would like, because the early look of that game is that old school chrome, like monochromatic look that I was like,
it was like a PS3
era thing.
there.
Yeah. And the faces emote so much better, especially compared that to how Oblivion looks.
Definitely.
And because this game like borrows a lot from Oblivion, from what some people noted, with the way the camera zooms in for like the dialogue, and going back to a silent protagonist, because people hated that from Fallout 4. And at the very least, it's like, it feels like the engine, this, I can definitely say it's seen some improvements, but it still sees some jank. Faces look great, but there's some dead eyes there. And the combat looks janky. It looks like a slightly better Fallout 4, but I realized that Fallout 4's combat was not as good as I was expecting it to.
I must have like a soft spot for it, because the combat didn't look terrible for me. Just at least for the first person shooting aspect.
You know what it is? I played 76, which is the game that came out later, and the combat of that felt worse. So that's
maybe.
Yeah,
because I mean, I never really had much of a problem with the Fallout 4. It was like, it's maybe like a bit of a rigid shooter, but it was still decent.
I'll say this is like, I never used bats on Fallout 4. That to me tells me a lot, that it was like, it worked.
It worked enough, but then playing something like New Vegas and 3, it was like you could only use VATS or you would not hit anything.
Yeah.
Oh man, good times. So yeah, I didn't have too much problem with the gameplay. I liked that you could have like your own little robot coming out of the cargo hold. I love that.
Straight out of No Man's Sky also.
The creation of your own ship.
That's really cool.
Nice. The details with that, and like it was literally like fit pieces out and put pieces in and things like that. It wasn't just like, here's 3 options, switch them out at very specific areas. And like No Man's Sky is one of the things I complain about.
And there's 1,000 planets.
All right, yeah, we can talk about that. I told Zach, or was it you? I think that it
was both of us. It was in our chat,
basically. I feel like their whole thing is they're going to have like maybe 5 planets that are going to be actually important to the story, and everything else is padding, where it's like, oh, you can go off to this planet and go hunt bounties and stuff, but it's not going to actually have anything like real. It's going to be mostly procedural, and then certain areas are going to be curated, which I will say, in the depth of just absolute chaos that No Man's Sky is, they eventually figure that out, where they have a traveling space station that you can summon, and that's like your curated zone. But I do wish there were more areas like on planets that were specifically set that you could remember and save there to always visit, because it's like if you leave that area, you can never go back or find it, because it despawns that base that you found. So this might be a way to kind of circumvent that, where you have specific space stations and bases. And
I heard, like, I was just listening to a podcast discussing about this. Like, some people have heard different opinions of what is it that they could be doing. This could be the procedurally generated thing of these 1,000 planets are just like math that something put an algorithm that creates them, or it can actually be people forget that Skyrim had like 200 something dungeons that were not procedurally generated. They were handcrafted by Bethesda. So
used a lot of assets though.
No, yes, but it's still like handcrafted. It's still like
that's fair.
Everything handcrafted with specific things that are like placed in specific places with narrative and all of that. Yeah. Especially for a game that, do you know that this game had the trademark for Starfield started in 2013? This is how long Bethesda has had this like planned out, almost 10 years. And
I remember people were like making mentions of it, and it was like Fallout in space, and it was like, this means nothing to me. Come back when I see something about it.
I would seen it, yeah. But I guess it also goes to show that it, like, Star Citizen is still not out. So doing this kind of space game is like it's a huge undertaking. So
it is, because it's so hard to do, apparently, because you have to like break a lot of gaming rules to make stuff like that work.
And I tell you, Paul, it's like if they manage to land this ship with Starfield, this could be like favorite game ever, kind of. Because to me, it's like just the idea of space travel and just space in general. It's like what we've always wanted, a Star Wars game like this.
Yeah, we've been looking for it for every place there is.
Yeah, and no one has given it to us.
No. There is one thing that we also haven't talked about yet that has kind of raised a red flag, and it is the you cannot seamlessly travel.
Yeah, that was just recently announced. It's like No Man's Sky will have the leg up there, whereas like you see the planet and you don't have to load it, you just immediately get there. I think with the irony of this is that now I believe it more than ever that you're not like exploring an entire planet, you're just exploring a tiny chunk section of that planet. And that leads me to believe that the exploration of these planets are going to be more handcrafted than people give them credit for. If you have to load in into things.
I think that they said you could still land anywhere. So I'm wondering if it's like, all right, you're going to choose you're going to look at the planet, you're going to say, land me here, and then loading screen, it's going to pick a spot that's suitable.
But it's not you like controlling the ship and going straight to like the landing spot. That's the thing that they're not letting you there. Apparently this will remind me a little bit like what you can do with Mass Effect 1.
That's almost what I was thinking, because that was exactly what would happen. You'd just pick a spot, it would land you, and then you could break out the Mako, which I'll fight anyone that hates those segments. I really love the Mako. Especially
now that it works. And like if you play the Mako section in the Legendary Edition of Mass Effect, it's like the game is now technically works compared to the 360 version. So the Mako elements don't feel as bad to me personally, because I would hate them on the 360 version because like 15 frames a second, the game could crash or the frame rate could tank and you would lose that. That game had bugs where sometimes you would lose the ability to even use your controller. You would have to reload that game. It's like Mass Effect 1 was a buggy mess. And
must have avoided the heck out of all that.
Or maybe they finally fixed a bunch of that on patches. But the thing is that Mass Effect 1 was just not a technically sound game. Everyone loved it because of the idea of the massive space opera, the story, the characters.
It really was such a good story.
So Starfield, I'm hoping it's good. Like, here's the thing, like Fallout 76 is the last game these guys released. So they have that. We can be hyped and all that, but there's also that worry that have they finally figured out how not to do a buggy game like that again, or like releasing something and be like, we'll fix it later. I would hope the Microsoft acquisition not puts them in an extra position where they can't let a game go out like that ever again, especially with how embarrassing Fallout 76 was for them.
Really hope
and the reputation. I feel them delaying it is a good sign that they actually learned. I hope that whenever this thing comes out, they say it's still early 2023 based on the parameters they've given us here.
Another bloodbath.
Yeah. So I just hope it's good because I wasn't excited for 76. After I saw it, I still played it and it still crushed my heart how destroyed that series got after that. It gotten better with Wastelanders and all that, but it's still like Fallout 76 has a stink to it that I don't think it can ever recover from, and it's insane to me that they're still supporting it. But Starfield, I feel, could be a reminder that, hey, there is a reason Skyrim is so successful. It's not just a high seller. It was one of the greatest RPGs ever made. Yeah. Maybe it dates it now based on everything we've gotten after, but there's a reason that game was huge in 2011. We said it in our most anticipated thing earlier this year. Obviously, we both lost Starfield. We had it on our list, but it was like the next game from the creators of Fallout and Skyrim. There's something big to that. So,
I mean, even to this day, I am a little bit surprised how well Skyrim actually holds up. Just with like a little bit of coat of paint, it's like got a little jank, but at
that
the same
PS5,
time,
Xbox Series X version are great. So,
like the shooting still works, the spells still work, the melee still works. It's like it all is there.
The narrative still works,
hits, especially in some of those side content. Oh, the Dark Brotherhood storyline still like gets me.
Yeah, so I'm getting ready to finally diving in to Skyrim. Just got to get
You
through all
keep
this other
saying
stuff.
that.
Yes.
I don't know if you're gonna really do it this time.
Here's the thing: whenever there's a sequel coming out, that tends to give me more of a reason to do it. So
Maybe so. We'll see.
we'll see. So that was the Xbox showcase. Definitely the big things to me were Starfield and Diablo 4. What about you?
Honestly, I think I'm going to say the same because I'm just not as big on most of these. Even though they're good, they're just not what really draws me.
Yeah.
And even though I haven't played Diablo, somehow...
When I learned that, I was like, I would have sworn you had already played it.
It came out on PS3 and 360 when I worked at GameStop, and I was like,
in 2013.
one day I think I'll get that. And
then you never got the PS4 version that came out a year after. The version
I almost did. I was really close to getting it, and then something else came out, and I just decided to play that instead. And now it's like, well, I guess I'll just wait till Diablo 4, and I really want to jump in to.
You should, because you definitely should. I tell you, especially because now the version we're getting of Diablo 3 is so complete. Now this is like Blizzard finally got that game in the perfect shape that it needed to be. It's so addicting. It's like, I don't know how much you're into top-down RPGs, but
I don't touch them very much, but they have a cool quality to it that I like. So maybe I'm going to put it on my wish list, and then the next time it's on like a good enough sale, I'm just going to snag it.
It's $20 usually. So
okay, so it's already at like a decent price. I've been picking up some other software for work related stuff, so I might have to wait a little, but I think I'm gonna grab it. We'll see. Yeah,
it's a great co-op game. Like you being into Destiny is like play the original looter. That's basically the opposite.
That's the problem that I also come into, because I feel like whenever I want to do the looter side, I'm just going to need to go into Destiny to like get stuff that actually helps me. So playing another looter on top of it, I'm like, oh gosh.
But that's difference. There's a difference of playing a service like looter, like Destiny, that's kind of like an MMO, and Diablo, which is not an MMO.
Doesn't it still have like a living, breathing marketplace and stuff?
No, they killed the auction house.
Okay. Got it. Well, yeah. So Diablo and Starfield were definitely the ones that I was like, okay, I'm curious.
And the Last Case of Benedict Fox is the one that I'm like, curious. I'm curious for that one.
That was the third for me, for sure.
Yeah, but I would say Diablo 4 was definitely the most impressive one. Just on visuals alone, that thing looked so good, and everything else.
Necromancer was really awesome. I love the gameplay of it, the overworld, all that.
It looked like a great evolution, and it looked like more the mix of Diablo 2 and 3 that I was expecting it to.
Yeah,
that it's like it's going back to like the art style that the diehards really like about Diablo, but it seems like it has all the quality of life that Diablo 3 blessed players. As much as the Diablo 2 diehards like to shit on that game, it's like Diablo 3 is an excellent game, especially after the launch period. So that's why I tell you, it's like some people don't let go of launch grudges, no matter how great a game gets. That's why you always have to make a great first impression. I hope Diablo 4 makes a better impression than at least Diablo Immortals, that people were loving until they ran into pay-to-win scenarios.
But Alejandro, didn't you have a phone?
I do. I have Diablo 4 in my phone. I have Diablo Immortals in my phone.
Oh, man.
I tried it. It's like, it works, but knowing that it hits a pay-to-win wall eventually, I'm like, God damn it. Well,
just like all the mobile games. They wonder why people don't want to embrace mobile gaming,
because
and that's
of that.
why. But anyway,
but because the mobile market has built itself up to the only way you can be successful is being free to play, and they got to make money.
Because nobody wants to buy a game on their phone.
And that really sucks. Hey, Troy Baker is doing a live video right now, so on Instagram. So all right, Paul. There are a few other things to talk about other than this E3 stuff, but we can like blast through this real quick.
I'm fine with that.
So was it yesterday or 2 days ago that Capcom finally gave some details about the planned DLC for Resident Evil Village number 2?
I think it was yesterday, but yeah.
Titled Shadows of Rose. No, I think it was 2 days ago. It is a direct continuation of where Village's story left off, and it's breaking away from Village's first-person perspective to be exclusively third-person. As an aside, Capcom is also introducing the ability to play the entire Village campaign also in third-person. More additions to the Mercenary mode were announced, including the ability to play as Lady Dimitrescu. Capcom also immediately released the next-gen versions of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard and Resident Evil 2 and 3 Remake. As for other stuff that they had at that showcase, just real quick, they showed tiny bit of gameplay of Resident Evil 4 Remake. They announced I think they showed a little bit more of Street Fighter, but not something substantial.
Just a little bit, yeah.
They announced that I think tomorrow they're doing a video for the 10-year anniversary of Dragon's Dogma. I would assume, based on the leaks of both the Capcom leak and the NVIDIA leak, that's maybe where they're going to tease Dragon's Dogma 2. So we'll see.
I hope so.
But the big one that there was that, yeah, Resident Evil 7, 2, and 3, that we announced the patches earlier this year. They're out now. And
I am kind of shocked that for one thing, the Shadows of Rose is a DLC and not the sequel. Because that's really what I thought was going to happen. Secondly, that they just flat out spoiled the ending of Village. If you didn't, just like,
if you didn't play Village, F you. That was that thing.
I felt a little frustrated at them by that one because I was like, oh, thank God I played that game, because imagine finding out those details. I mean, I'm not going to... Yeah,
you're not going to really spoil it.
But the stuff that happens in Village is just like, yeah, so that happened. This is what's going up next. I was like, whoa, guys, that's a big deal. But anyway, I mean, Rose was a cool character to be introduced to in the first place. So the fact that I'm going to find out what's the deal with her much sooner rather than later will actually get me to buy a Resident Evil DLC in the first time in like 5 years or something.
Yeah, because the last DLC I bought was all the way back in Resident Evil 5, because I didn't buy the 7 DLC.
Yeah, I didn't buy any of that either, because I felt like one of them, the one with Zoe,
End of Zoe is Resident Evil 7, and the banned footage, Volume 1 and Volume 2.
I felt like neither of those added anything to it. However, the found footage, that was the Chris Redfield one, right? That was at least like an interesting change of pace, which, as we saw...
No. Found footage is not Chris Redfield. That's also just part of...
Just the Chris... What's the name of that one?
Not a Hero.
Not a Hero. Okay, so I'm thinking
and that was free. And the Not a Hero DLC was free.
That's right. Okay,
because it was
that was the only one I was interested in, and then I forgot to play it. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm just interested in playing Rose's DLC. I love her character design. I love the reason she's in the story. I love the fact that she has pseudo powers that I want them to explore more of, because they're really going in a different direction with Village, but like in a cooler way than they did with 6, because it seems like it's almost the same, but like they're doing it in such a way that it feels more organic to the storyline, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just happy they're giving me another reason to get to run through Village again, a game that I liked a lot, but
I wonder what it's going to feel like to play in third person.
That's what I'm more excited, because the thing is that gameplay wise, despite the perspectives, is like the RE engine works similarly for both 7 and 8 and 2 and 3. Same control scheme, same feel of aiming.
It's funny how well they built their engine that they could just switch it like this.
Yeah,
and it still works.
I would wonder if this is now them conceding that third person is Resident Evil, because I would say that first person works better for Biohazard because of its more deliberate.
Definitely. I don't think it would be nearly as interesting to walk around in that world, because it's so drab and single colorish. But then like Village has so much going on that you could kind of get away with it, I think.
I'll say the next gen version, because I didn't put it in what I've been playing, because I just played the initial section until you get into the tables. The faces have improved much more on PS5. Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't seen 2 and 3 yet, but I have 2 installed. But yeah, more Resident Evil. Thank God. Number 3, Paul. It is being claimed that the next Nintendo Direct is going to happen the last week of June. According to Alana Pierce with some extra corroboration made by Video Games Chronicle, that the Nintendo Direct that usually happens around E3 time is allegedly happen on June 29th. What will we see there? What's interesting is that I was talking with PJ in that extended conversation that I'm still yet to post here. That's full of cursing. I need to like bleep all of that. That Nintendo usually makes directs as soon as a big game that they have comes out. And in that case was Super Mario the Mario Strikers game that came out on Switch.
Yes.
That people really like, but there's still some disappointment with how bare bones it is, which is like has been basically the MO for Nintendo when it comes to the sports games they have been putting out on Switch, that they just fill it up after. That's like, but it's still like, it got good reviews compared to Mario Golf, which also was a bare bones release. I am interested to see if this big Nintendo Direct. Technically, here's the thing: Nintendo already has the rest of their year filled up. Zelda got delayed, but the two Pokemon games are in November. Splatoon is in September. Xenoblade Chronicles got pushed up to July. The only thing that I can see them happening, and it's the eternal hope that happens over and over and over and over every time a Nintendo Direct comes in and that doesn't happen, it breaks my heart. But there's been the thing that people have noted. Nintendo has made it a point that Zelda has had a presence in a Nintendo Switch every freaking year.
Yeah.
It's like 2017 Breath of the Wild, 2018 the Necromancing the Stone, Cadence of Hyrule. That was in 2018. 2019 gave us Zelda Link Between Worlds remake. 2020 gave us Age of Calamity. Very like last minute they popped that on us. 2021 gave us Skyward Sword remastered
HD.
So if you see, every year has had a Zelda something. So with Breath of the Wild punting, please, they have a month that they have nothing in October. This is the Zelda Wind Waker anniversary, 20th anniversary, FYI, and it's also the Metroid Prime 20th anniversary.
Oh man! Well, you know that Metroid's not getting anything.
Yeah, absolutely not. But even though like Dread has sold decent for them, like it was the best-selling Metroid game individually, but it's still,
at least we know that the series is saved because of Dread. And I was just thinking about it recently, that I might want to one day revisit Dread because
of the easy mode, the rookie mode.
Because of my frustration with Elden Ring. I was like, Dread wasn't that bad in the end.
I remember you put the when we were watching the Game Awards, and Metroid Dread won Action Adventure Game of the Year.
Oh, I'm sure I got really pissed.
Yeah, you made the meme of the Squidward meme of like him looking at Patrick and SpongeBob.
I think I remember what you were talking about.
You being like hated, or I don't remember who was. I hated me, the Metroid hater, and seeing everyone like absolutely celebrating Metroid,
like excited about Metroid Dread winning the action adventure game, and like me who hated it.
Yeah.
I mean, I still hold by all those criticisms, which was in like a 3-video saga that we all went through.
Yeah.
But man, I love a lot of stuff about that. So anyway, I was just thinking about it while we were doing all this.
But that's the thing, like those, if Nintendo would have to make a direct, because I was making that argument with PJ that I could see them waiting until September to do their big direct, because the Pokemon games are never announced by them. That's Pokemon Company that does them.
Yeah.
So I could see them be like, okay, Splatoon is out. Now let's talk about our games again. And that's why they were talking September. But if they're going to fill up the year now, maybe they're going to do it. It's crazy that they didn't do it this week. And I'll just say this. It's like I would have expected more companies to finally like default to Summer Gamefest in a way. Now,
I would think it would be the path of least resistance.
Exactly. But it seems that so many developers are still not fully in to Keely's thing. And now E3 they say they're coming back next year with a in-person event and a live stream for conferences.
There's more competition than I thought there would be, frankly.
Yeah, and Keely said, we're also doing a live stream event and an in-person event. So they're going to put them next to each other. So
next year, it's going to be hell for us to
record. Yeah, because who's going to go where? That's gonna be like the big question.
God forbid if they try to schedule things and then the other one shows up and then one of those is at the same time.
I'll say this, Paul. If there's something that I lament for this year is that Square Enix didn't do a presentation, because last year they gave me the gold for an entire year.
I feel like you've hyped up the concept of Strangers of Paradise, causing me physical pain for so long that you didn't realize that it's not even that great of a game. You just like watching me suffer.
It's a fun game. It's still just sitting there for me.
It's like it's like shovelware PS3 action game, but because it hurt me, you were like, "This is the greatest thing I've ever seen."
That's the thing. I've never been facetious at saying that I enjoyed that game in the casual difficulty, and you did too.
I did.
I have receipts. You're like,
I'm not gonna say that. I'm not gonna argue that fact.
Yeah.
But
I definitely played it up because I knew how much you hate it. Yeah. Definitely part of it is that I liked hyping it up because of how much you hated it. What I was surprised that I actually enjoyed it also. So
that is the funniest twist out of all of this.
Because
that last demo, we were like, oh crap, this is actually kind of fun.
Yeah, it is. But definitely no meme worthy game that you hate this time.
Not this time.
So yeah, but then when Nintendo please, we have heard many reports from reputable sources that Twilight Princess and Wind Waker are just sitting there. They sat on Pikmin, so until they finally released it.
Yeah,
I still remain hopeful. I will forever remain hopeful, even if you guys put it in the freaking Nintendo Switch Online as a GameCube thing. I don't care. Just give it to me. I don't want to play it on my Wii anymore. So.
Definitely. I don't even think my Wii works anymore, honestly. It's all set to dormant. I don't think it would start up.
Trust me, it may. The Wii is the Wii is like was so technologically light that you wouldn't need to worry.
My parents' rabbit ate through the laser reader that's supposed to plug into
it's
the
not gonna
back
work.
of it. Yeah. I would not be able to unless I found like an off-market one. So
there is a chance. There's 100 million of those suckers out there.
I'm hoping so.
Final story, Paul. I wish PJ had been here for this because there's the last minute thing. He said he could have been, and then something happened at his apartment where he couldn't be. So Sonic Frontiers will not be delayed as a result of fan feedback, insists Sonic Team's boss. Takashi Iuka says the public don't understand the new format they're trying with this new Sonic entry. This is said despite the hashtag Delay Sonic Frontiers having trended earlier this month after the gameplay revealed by IGN. And I just
love when somebody in the developing side just says, you don't understand. It reminds me of Battlefield 2042 quite a bit.
Yes, and also Battlefield 5. And let me find some of the quotes. I need to find that because I didn't put them here. Because
while you do that, I'm going to just start chatting about it because I finally got to actually look at some gameplay of Sonic Frontiers and what is going on with Sonic's body. It's just he doesn't move the way he should. He just kind of stands there and then his model gets thrown at things.
Yeah. I'm going to read exactly like the interview they gave to BGC.
Hit it.
Izuka says, it's not really that surprising. Izuka replied, we do realize everyone is just kind of reacting to the videos that they saw. And because they don't understand what this new gameplay is, they're kind of comparing it to other games that they already know. And this new game system itself is something that doesn't really exist in any other comparable titles. So we really hope that from here until launch, we can really explain what open zone gameplay is. He added, if people come to Gamescom or Tokyo Game Show, they can get that hands-on experience to play the game and understand what the game is. Because right now we're just kind of watching videos of people reacting to what they believe the game to be. Frontiers is in development now, and actually we're doing a lot of play testing with our target audience who would be in that demographic of someone who'd play a Sonic game and enjoy it. From our play testing results, we have been iterating. We have been listening to the comments that come back, but we've also been getting a lot of great feedback from people who rate the game and are like, I had a lot of fun playing this game. I give it an 80 or 90 point score out of 100. So we do feel that we're getting to the point where this game is done and people will like it, and we do want to get that game into our fans as soon as possible. He added, we really feel confident in the playtest results that we're getting. A lot of people are saying they had a lot of fun. They really enjoyed the game. But we're working right now with our team in Japan. We're really hard at work to make sure this holiday people can buy the game, pick it up, take it home, and have a fun experience with it. So if our development team all gets coronavirus, or they're all hospitalized, or there's something that actually prohibits us from being able to deliver the game on time, we will need more time. So I guess they gotta get COVID.
Wow. Okay. Well,
I can't wait for those 80s and 90s to turn into the 30s and 40s when the actual people the games actually review the game.
It's like this man walked out of some kind of capsule that just shields him from all of the world, and he doesn't genuinely realize where Sonic has been in the video games world.
Yeah. Let me read what Skill Up's reactions was when he played the game, because I posted those.
It lives rent free in my head right now.
So Skill Up played the game. He actually flew all the way from Australia to Summer Gamefest, and he said, I played Sonic Frontiers and I did not enjoy myself. I had to ask the staff at the beginning of the demo if it was being cloud streamed because the image looks so grainy and degraded. Nope, that's just how it looks. The tech side of it is just awful at this point. Horrible pop-in, both in the distance and near background textures, low-res textures, choppy frame rate. The game just looks kind of blurry all the time and just so last gen. No way this doesn't get delayed. And there's the design stuff. The open world is so dull and vacant. Enemies so weirdly designed. Puzzles so uninteresting. Music so out of place. The floating rails just floating. I spoke to more than a few people that really like this, but that sure as shit ain't where I'm at.
And
I wish PJ was here to reiterate what he said to me, like near the end of our like reaction, where
what did he say?
It was like, apparently there's a continued group that they want this guy to be fired because this guy has been in charge of things like Sonic Forces.
Oh, this is that. Okay, I remember when y'all were talking about this.
Yeah, so
because he had like what 6, 7, or 8 different flops in the Sonic side of it. He's like, if this is a professional sports team, you get 3 losing seasons, you get fired immediately.
Exactly.
So the fact that he's still in charge after Sonic just keeps flopping left and right is not a good sign.
Yeah, and I'll say this is like, this is the worst time for you to put a 3D Sonic game that's bad. Like, the movies have like recovered and reintegrated Sonic's image into something that people can champion. Those movies are good. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 available now on Paramount Plus, FYI.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yes, you can watch that movie there. It's like those movies are like, they reviewed fairly well for a video game movie. Like when you're like above a 60 on Rotten Tomatoes, that's fresh.
Yeah.
People that have gone there, like kids have freaking loved that movie.
Understandable. I watched the first one at least, and it was like, I actually was like, oh, this is a cute little kids movie. That's awesome.
The first movie was a fun, charming movie.
Yeah.
That had like such a great family connection. That is the kind of movie that I remember watching as a kid, like going into the movies. It's like, I'm glad that Sonic has been able to like break through and do that. Don't like erase all that goodwill by putting a bad Sonic game. When in this world where everyone like screams calamity, someone here included, when a game got delayed 2 years ago, we are Cyberpunk.
Oh yeah.
We are here where people are actively asking, delay Sonic Frontiers.
Yeah.
These are the fans making a hashtag trend telling you, please delay this. And you're like, no, you don't get it. It's like, my dudes, just don't put it out. It's like, nurture your IP. Like, Sonic has been a meme forever. Yes, I mean, you can see Sonic there and like popping back.
He's looking over your shoulder.
I love the character. At the same time, and acknowledge in the gaming space, ever since like the Sonic Heroes days, with Shadow the Hedgehog, the Shadow the Hedgehog, the game, Sonic Boom, Sonic 06, Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Forces, it's just been trash fire after trash fire. Sonic Colors was like, okay, they're finally like finding a way to make something good out of it. And then Sonic and the Night something that was horrendous. It was like
Black Knight.
And the Black Knight for Wii. That was like Sonic with a sword. That game has like a third.
It's my first. No, that was my second Sonic game ever. The first one was the Arabian Nights.
Oh God, I feel so sorry. I
stepped into the Sonic world at the wrong
absolutely worst
and
time possible.
I immediately bounced off it and was like, okay, guess I don't like Sonic.
That's the thing. Like, you having missed Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, like Sonic Heroes, that era where he was good, really sucks, because then it took until Sonic Generations to mix 2D Sonic with like the good parts of Sonic Unleashed to be like, okay, it's like we're finally getting back on track, and then they completely crapped the bed with Forces. which was originally pitched as this is Sonic Generation 2. Imagine, and that's bad. It's like, how many times can you fumble? Like the fan game Sonic Mania brought so much like prestige to Sonic's name back in 2017. It's like it takes fans to make a good Sonic game. And I just don't understand how, with Sonic being the perpetual IP that Sega has that is recognizable, thank God Persona and Yakuza have finally made names for themselves, that Sonic being obliterated into critical maulings doesn't hurt Sega because they finally have two things that are beloved. It's like, so, and this would be the time for you, like, okay, we got a Sonic movie that's good. 2 of them. Let's get the game good. Let's give Sonic fans the win. The Sonic cycle is a meme for a reason.
Yeah.
And it's insane that it lives up to the Sonic cycle all the time. Although this time, now the fans caught up on the bad early on and be like, no, please delay it. Because it's always until reviews and the game's out in the wild that...
I'm just glad that somehow this ended up getting like a positive shift where the general public is like, yeah, we're okay if you delay this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because just 3 years ago, that was unheard of, and it was like a freaking nightmare. But especially even myself, I was been like, oh man, if I had the opportunity to go back to certain games and say, hey, please delay this, Metal Gear Solid 5, for instance, I look back almost daily when I listen to some of the soundtrack pieces and I think, gosh, this could have been the best game I've ever played if they had just actually finished it.
Yeah, but that's the thing, like that one was the creator was fired.
Yeah,
so they wouldn't be able to they wouldn't be able to finish that game without the creative lead.
The idea stands behind that, but yeah, that was probably not the best example because of some very specific things that happened. But yeah, Cyberpunk, for instance,
I think Cyberpunk is the perfect example, especially for that one that got 4 delays in the same year. That to me is like the most insane part, because
that was bad.
Because we got the first delay. That game was supposed to come out on April 16, 2020. We got the first delay second week of January. The day before Last of Us 2 was supposed to launch on June 18th, we got the second delay. When that game was in September, that it was moving to November. We reached, and then it was like, yeah, it's gold now. And they got gold in September. It's like, okay, I told you, well, this is gold. It's locked now. The game's done. Then we reach October, delayed again. It's like, and then it's like the game comes out and it's a complete trash fire in the lower tier consoles. So it's like, that definitely has spoiled things in a way, but it's rare, especially like right now, like look what's happening with God of War Ragnarok. The Bloomberg report saying, oh yeah, it's like, we have heard at the end of this month, they're going to give it a date for November. And Cory Barlog returning to Twitter yesterday to kind of like get like a wink and a nod. It's like, some people are just wanting that game to come out now. I don't think they're going to be happy for a delay. Usually fans are not happy for a delay. These fans are asking for one. Think about that. Oh man, I feel bad for diehard Sonic fans. I really feel bad. We witnessed the Sonic cycle in front of our very eyes. PJ was like, I'm so excited for Frontiers. The day after, I want this thing delayed. Literally. So
I'm just really glad that I'm outside of that fandom right now.
Exactly. I'm glad that I can appreciate the character, but I don't consider myself part of that fandom to be burned.
Definitely.
So it's just funny to watch. It's always funny. It's like, what's funny is that DC fans in the movie side was the Sonic cycle also. Especially in the Snyder era.
That's very similar. A lot of fart smelling in that direction too.
Yeah. And with that, Paul, we conclude this week's episode. So starting next week, we're back to normal again. No more showcases. No more like blast of news. Hopefully we don't get we get some good stuff to talk about because it's seeming slow now that everything's kind of past us. So no Abandon this time. We're here Actually, a year ago today was when that stupid account tweeted, Abandon's name starts with an S, ends with an L. That's when it started. Exactly a year ago. So,
I hope something happens to them. I want some kind of recourse for the scam that they pulled on people.
Yeah. At least it kept us with some food for that summer. So hopefully
it was an interesting time, that's for sure.
Yeah. And around this time, I still didn't have my PS5 a year ago. Can you believe that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Despite me buying it on May, I got it in July 3rd. So it's weird thinking about just a year ago from like today.
I know.
Where we were from when we were recording. So where can people find you, Paul?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter. That's where I post all of my stuff, from art to other things. And in the next several months, we'll see if I can start posting some of the things that I'm working on. It's pixel art related, and I know that I can say that much. And I'll probably do a lot more art and maybe animated things just to like be practicing about it. Mm-hmm. So take a look there. Where can they find you? They can find me on Twitter at @A_Doro_Segovia, where I can make fun of some senators sometimes. You can follow me at Alejandro Segovia 93, where I post the links for the show on Instagram. And you can find the written content for thecriticalcorner.com, where I'm gonna now like shake off the cobwebs and just talk about all these showcases we got and see who the winner was. In my opinion, one that I didn't expect. So Paul, it's been a pleasure always recording the show with you. And remember, people, you can always catch us from Wednesdays onwards right now until further notice, whenever we decide to make the shift, when everything is put together. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, press X. Play. Good night, everybody.
Hasta luego.